Is trust merely a facade? This thought haunted me the day I stumbled upon the truth about Carrie. "Carrie, what is this?" I demanded, clutching a love note not written in my hand. Her plea, "Ryan, please, you have to understand," fell flat against her betrayal. "I didn't think you'd find out," she stammered, her voice quavering with a mix of fear and regret, yet her eyes still avoiding mine. "Don't be mad. I can explain everything," she added, trying to soften the blow with words that couldn't mask the gravity of her actions. Her broken promises echoed in my head. This is my story. Enjoy watching it. Some believe our path in life is shaped by our choices, moment by moment. For Ryan Gilchrist, a tiny decision led him down a path he didn't expect. Maybe that's just how life works. Who can say? Ryan was fixing up a garage into a bedroom for a client. The owner liked Ryan's work so much that he told a friend about it. This friend, wanting his kitchen remodeled for an anniversary gift, called while Ryan was there. Ryan needed the job, so he agreed to meet him around noon. The friend's house was on the other side of town. The fastest way there went near Ryan's own house, but Ryan had no plans to stop by until a red car cut him off. To avoid a crash, Ryan swerved into a turn lane, and then he had to go that way. It turned out to be simpler to swing by his house and then take a big road going east to west, instead of trying to get back on his original path through the busy noon traffic. Ryan wasn't bothered. He thought grabbing his laptop with its spreadsheets and a program for designing in 3D would help with the new client meeting. He could use it to figure out a good price and show a nice 3D view of how the kitchen would look when done. Sure, he could have managed without it. He knew his prices well and could have sketched something by hand. But the choice to grab the laptop from home was such a small thing to change his life so much. Ryan pulled up to his house and was surprised to see his wife Carrie's car there. She usually worked at the bank downtown and only had to work half days on some Saturdays. Today wasn't her day off. He didn't know why she was home, which worried him. He walked fast to the kitchen door. The door didn't squeak when he opened it because he made sure everything in the house worked well. He didn't like when things were broken. When he stepped into the house, he didn't make a sound. But he wouldn't have needed to worry about noise. The two people he saw wouldn't have heard him. They were too busy with each other. Ryan stopped dead when he saw them. He never thought he'd see his wife with another man, especially not like this. Carrie was with a man who was touching her in ways that made Ryan's heart stop. She was half naked, and it was clear they were doing things that should only happen between him and Carrie. Her clothes were thrown aside, and the man's hands were places they shouldn't be. Carrie seemed to be touching the man, too. It was a shocking sight for Ryan, something he never imagined he'd see. Carrie was half bare, hinting more was to come. "Oh, Carrie," the man groaned. "I've been waiting so long for this. No teasing, okay?" His voice got a bit whiny at the end. Carrie laughed with joy. "Really, Marshall?" she teased. She touched his chest and rubbed her hips against him. "Was it worth the wait?" she whispered in a flirty way. Ryan saw red. He didn't think. He just reacted. 1 second he was stunned. The next he was moving fast. He walked through the kitchen and into the living room. He firmly placed his left foot on the carpet and swung his right one in a sharp curve into the man's lower part. Just before, Marshall felt something. Maybe the sound of Ryan's shoes or his moving shadow. Without thinking, Marshall moved closer to Carrie, thinking he'd avoid danger. But he brought Carrie into harm's way. She might not have been hit if he hadn't moved. Ryan's heavy boot, with a hard toe, hit the man's private part hard, sending him flying forward and up. Ryan was strong and had moved a bit to get more force. Only the hard part of the boot hit Carrie, but it was enough. Pain shot through them, making it hard to breathe or scream. They hit the sofa and held on for a moment. Ryan put his foot back down and got ready to hit again. His usually kind face was now twisted in rage. He stepped further into the room, getting closer to the two who had been caught off guard. He had planned to hurt the man before him more, but suddenly it was clear no more was needed. Marshall, a man Ryan didn't know, started to scream in a high voice that filled the room. Carrie's screams, even higher, started a moment after. Both fell to the floor, rolling in pain. The pain was too much, like the worst kind of hurting anyone could think of. Marshall and Carrie were in their own worlds of hurt. only able to scream so loud they almost broke their voices. Ryan stood back, watching the two twist on the floor while the screams hit his ears. He saw his wife's chest move wildly as her body shook. Her lower body was half covered. He could see her hands tight against her. The other man's part was still out, still standing, as if still ready for carry. The sight made Ryan sick, but something else was not right. He looked down, shocked to see he was excited. This was the last thing he wanted, making him feel deeply ashamed. His anger turned to shame in a moment. He was shocked. His body was going against him. He could not be turned on by seeing his wife with another man. That was not him. His screams, mixed with anger and shame, joined the pain-filled screams of the other two. Long after it happened, Ryan saw he had been fighting the urge to use the Glock Model 21 in its holder. Sometimes he still pats himself on the back for not pulling it out. Back then, every fiber of his being screamed for him to use it to end the lives of the two who had shamed him. Now and then he thought if he'd have saved a bullet for himself to wash away his own shame. The gun had 13 rounds ready and one more in the slot. 14.45 ACP bullets would have done the job. The thought of violence didn't shake him then, and it doesn't bug him much now. Ryan Lincoln Gilchrist grew up under his grandpa's care after a car crash took his folks when he was just 7. His mom's dad was half Comanche, and the man was tight with Ryan's great-great-grandpa, who had been a warrior back in the 1800s. This ancestor had fought many battles, riding out from the Llano Estacado, the big flatlands of West Texas. He died fighting off those who came to punish his people for their attacks. Grandpa took young Ryan camping on those plateaus a lot. He showed him hidden spots that only those with warrior blood knew of, places others feared to tread. The wildness of those highlands stuck with Ryan. He loved the quiet, the sharp air. It spoke to something deep inside him, and he often wished to go back. Up there, life was simple, just him, nature, and the need to make it through. No, the wish to finish off those two who betrayed him didn't shake him. He even felt a bit sad for a while for not doing it. But that feeling faded. This is the 21st century, after all. Things like that can't be done anymore. He had a big problem, far worse than he thought. Finding out Carrie was unfaithful shook him to the core. It wasn't just the images of her with another man that haunted him. Yes, they were awful pictures for any man to bear, but what also shook him was how his own body reacted. Seeing his wife getting ready to be with another man somehow excited him. This made him feel small, less of a man, and he hated himself for it. The thought even drove him to think about ending his life. After a tough 6 weeks, he finally found a therapist willing to help him. 2 other therapists had been scared off by the desperation in his eyes, but Dr. Christopher was different. In his 70s, he wasn't easily scared. He was a blessing. The doctor explained it was a basic, deep-rooted reaction. In all male animals, including humans, there's an instinct aimed at making sure they spread their genes. It was all about keeping the species going. According to the doctor, this was linked to a competition of sorts, to ensure one's genes were the ones passed on. Some scientists even believe the shape of a man's part evolved to scoop out another man's genes from a woman, making room for his own. The doctor said the shape, with a larger tip and a narrower middle, could help in pushing out what was already there and take its place. Dr. Christopher told him this was why he reacted the way he did upon seeing his wife and that man. It was all about deep, basic instincts. Ryan was a good man, the doctor said, but sometimes deep old urges take over. When Ryan saw something shocking, a very old part of him reacted. Now he knew it likely wouldn't happen again. Knowing would help him stay in control. Much of what he learned was more than Ryan wanted to know. He was okay knowing it was an old, deep reaction. Everything else was extra. He told the doctor it wouldn't happen again, ever. Dr. Christopher saw how firm Ryan was and felt a bit uneasy. It had been a tough 4 years. Ryan and Carrie stayed together, but just barely. Ryan couldn't stop thinking about how he had reacted for a long time. When he started to pay attention again, he found Carrie trying hard to show she wanted their marriage to work. She was very loving, respectful, and admired him a lot, offering love in many ways anytime. She was doing her best to keep him. She was sorry, and Ryan saw that. He was mad about the lies and cheating, but She clearly felt bad. Over time, he stopped thinking about leaving her. They even took a short break but got back together after Carrie found him and begged him to come home. They went to couples therapy for over a year to fix their marriage. But even after the therapy, they could still see problems in their relationship. Their love life was never the same, though casual fun got a bit better after they talked to a helper. But the special way they showed love didn't come back. It took Carrie a year and a half to see Ryan didn't like to touch her right breast, the one he saw another man touch. She soon knew why. Then she figured out he didn't like her touching him much either. This led to more talking with someone to help, both together and alone. After a long while, things in bed got a bit better, but something deep in their bond broke and didn't come back. Carrie said they needed a new home since Ryan no longer loved the old one. Too many bad memories were in it. Ryan would look at spots in the old house and remember bad things. It was clear he could never feel happy coming home again. They found a new 2-story house with 4 rooms in a nicer area. It was too big for just 2, and keeping it clean was hard. They thought they might need the space one day. They thought about having kids for a while, but Carrie didn't really want them. Not now, she said. Talks about kids faded over time. They had thought about it right after getting hitched too, but Carrie had career plans. Kids didn't fit in. This time, when she stopped talking about it, Ryan thought he'd never bring it up again. The choice left him feeling empty, but he wasn't sure what to do about it. With time, Ryan managed to deal with most of his strong dislike and hurt from his wife's lie and cheating. He had to remind himself that both he and Carrie weren't new to love when they wed. It wasn't simple, but he pushed himself to think of the man Carrie was with, just like the others before they met. Things got a bit better, but didn't return to how they once were. Something was lost in their bond, something hard to name, but he felt its absence. They never really talked about Carrie's cheating, even with all the help from their advisors. Neither Ryan nor Carrie wanted to dig into that story. Maybe they should have. Ryan wasn't sure. Ryan was hitting 33 in July and sometimes felt older than his years. Today was such a day. He found a bit of gray in his hair by March, and it shook him for a while. Carrie just gave it a shoulder. It made him look wise, she said. Ryan watched her go without care. Wise? That's how young folks talk about older guys? It felt like the end of being in the chase. Worried by what it meant, he brought it up again weeks later. No need to worry, she told him. After all, he was married and out of the chase. It made him feel a bit better. Not much, but a bit. Yet he didn't feel okay about it now. He had come to terms with the gray, but other worries grew by late spring. He wasn't sure he'd stay married much longer. Even though Carrie was kind and loving since Ryan found out about the other man, her way and feelings felt changed now. He didn't snap the first time she picked a needless fight, the first time she nagged him without cause, or the first time she acted cold for no real reason. He didn't lose it the first or the second time he found out she wasn't where she claimed to be. But after many such times, he felt in his gut what was going on. Soon, it was clear. All the clues were there now, the clues that she was seeing someone else. They had started to show up 3 months ago, right after Carrie got a big job bump. It wasn't a total shock. He had worried it might happen again and had taught himself to be on the lookout for the first sign of change in her behavior. Over the last 4 years, he had read many books, a lot of books, most bought with cash from different old bookshops. Some were by mental health experts, and others by trained advisors without a fancy title. These books dove deep into the mind of a partner who wanders off and talked about how to get over being cheated on. However, it was the books by ex-detectives that he found the most gripping and helpful. These books shared tips on how to spot a cheater. They listed signs that should make a watchful partner suspicious. Some listed over 100 signs that a wife or husband might be playing around. One book, by a detective and a therapist together, was really insightful. Other books focused on ways to watch. Some even called it spying, a partner thought to be cheating. He now had a good collection of these books. He kept them hidden in a storage space in the garage where Carrie never went. The cobwebs in that part of the garage and the stack of dirty, oily rags in front of the bin kept her away. She got the creeps anytime she got close to it. Of late, he had gone back to look through many of these books. Ryan felt something was off. He noted the small fights over little stuff and his wife's cold lack of care. Worried, he placed a tiny voice-starting tape recorder under the seat of her 2-year-old car. When he picked it up early one Sunday with his wife still in bed, what he found didn't shock him. He heard 2 chats with her friends in the car and many calls Carrie made, all talking about some guy named Sean. The last talk on the tape, not all caught because the tape ended, made it clear they meant Shawn Michaels, her boss at the big city bank. This didn't hit Ryan too hard. Carrie had cheated before with a coworker named Marshall at another bank. They got close after spending lunches together and during slow times. It was easy to see Carrie could cheat on Ryan again with another boss. Once he started paying attention, Ryan saw clear signs she was cheating, just like the book said. Carrie thought she was sneaky, but Ryan knew almost right away. Having been through this with Carrie once helped him catch on quick, though always a bit behind. Knowing for sure, he started to pull back. Each lie he found hurt him, as he let the pain of her betrayal cut down his love for Carrie. He wanted it to be painful. He wanted to stop caring for her fast. And it worked, even quicker than he expected. Slowly, Carrie's cheating made his love for her fade away. When he felt no love for her, not even at night when he was all alone, he knew he was ready. "Hey, good-looking, you want a booth or a table?" The cheery voice of the woman snapped Ryan back to the now. His thoughts had gone far away while he stood waiting to be seated. These days, his mind was often elsewhere. He didn't like feeling out of control like this. "Oh, either's fine," he said, not really caring about where he sat. "Maybe somewhere I can look outside but still have some quiet?" "Got it," the short, round waitress said with a big smile. "Follow me this way." Ryan followed her to a booth by the back wall, away from the loud crowd and behind a half-high wall. "Want some coffee, dear?" she asked as Ryan squeezed his tall body into the tight space between the table and the fixed seat. It was a squeeze for a big guy, but once in, the table was just right for eating or working on his laptop. Just black, hot, and a lot of it, Ryan said. The waitress smiled. They didn't serve fancy coffee here, and she was glad not to be asked for it, wondering why any man would want such fancy drinks. She liked this guy. As she filled up the coffee pitcher at the counter, she looked over at the big man who had started coming in every morning and night since last Thursday. He owned a small business that did small fix-ups, made rooms look new, and fixed up old buildings. He always wore a neat suit, but his hands were rough from hard work. This man had worked a lot with his hands before, and it looked like he still did now and then. Yesterday, on Sunday, he walked in wearing blue jeans and a work shirt that was worn out from use. "What can I get for you this morning, dear?" she asked as she poured him his first cup. She placed the jug on the table close enough for him to reach if he stretched his long arms, but far enough from his hands to not be in the way. He showed his thanks with a smile. "Orange juice, Western omelet, hash browns, biscuits, and some ham," he replied, pointing at menu item number 6. She knew he would ask for that. He had ordered the same thing the past 3 mornings. She took the folded menu from him after jotting down his order. "Coming right up," she said, and walked off. She wanted to stay and talk with the man. The more she looked at him, the more she liked his clear blue eyes, the strong chin, and well, he seemed like he'd be strong under those old clothes. She started to wonder. Then she stopped that thought. She was with Fred. Had been for almost a year now, and she didn't want her mind to wander. He was much too young for her anyway. Ryan watched her slip the check with his order under the spring clip on the round metal order wheel and spin it so the cook could see it. The cook gave a nod to show he saw it was a new order. The hostess quickly moved to welcome more people coming in. The line was growing. It seemed like most of the small town had decided to skip making their own breakfast this early Monday morning. The air was filled with friendly chat, the sound of dishes clinking, and the occasional burst of laughter. The sense of cooking eggs, bacon and sausage, biscuits and cinnamon rolls from the kitchen made his mouth water. Ryan smiled. He enjoyed this place, and he was starting to really like the kind, happy waitress. She seemed to show what folks in this tiny town were like. A tiny village, really. The town was small, with maybe not even 500 folks living there. Most of them were like the lady serving coffee. Shy at first, but warm and chatty once she got to know you. Just yesterday on Sunday, she had sat with him for a good 20 minutes when the cafe was quiet. This had really made Ryan happy. Now, a bunch of people were coming in to eat. It was early, but in the countryside of Texas, people got up with the sun to stay out of the day's heat. Maybe they didn't need to anymore, especially after Ryan's team fixed the aircon in the old court building. But old habits die hard. This place was only 50 miles from the big city of San Antonio, with its 1.5 million folks, yet it seemed frozen in time, like something from the 1800s. Sure, the huge concrete road, Interstate 10, cut past just a bit away from the cafe, but the folks here barely paid it any mind. Ryan guessed their ancestors probably didn't fuss much over the big herds of cattle that passed through after the war back in the day either. He often wished he could have lived in that old time. He felt like he was born way too late, by about 150 years. He tried to snap out of these old dreams. The strong coffee helped. He eyed it with a bit of doubt. It was so strong, he joked to himself, that it might lift a horseshoe. Just last Friday, while clearing land for a new garage behind someone's house, his team had found a bunch of these old iron shoes. Taking another sip, he chuckled to himself that this brew might indeed lift 2 of those heavy things. Ryan Gilchrist had come a long way in the small town, keeping a close eye on some small fix-up jobs. The coffee here was pretty good. 4 years back, Ryan was just a small fish in a big lake. Now he'd grown a bit. There were many smaller fish in the lake than him. His work had gotten so big he spent most of his days stuck in a chair at a desk. He had to get an office in a tall building in the middle of town. He didn't like working there. He often said he missed doing real work. In the last 4 years, Ryan worked hard in night classes at UTSA. He had to take some breaks from work to finish classes during the day. He ended up with a degree in business, focusing on how to manage resources. He thought it would help him run his small company better. Some classes did help, and some were just okay. But for many, he had to memorize stuff that didn't matter just to pass tests. Sometimes, he had to pick answers he knew were wrong in real life. That bugged him a lot. But that was all behind him now, and he was starting to forget those annoying bits. He was sure he wouldn't go back for more school. His mind wandered from one thing to another as he sat there, waiting for his breakfast in the cozy cafe surrounded by nice people. He liked the warmth and the friendliness. He missed feeling that way at home. Thinking of home made him uncomfortable. He felt like he didn't really have a home anymore. Ryan had a lot going on with his work. Things were looking up, so much that he had to hire a helper just to keep up with all the calls. He also got someone part-time to handle the money stuff, making sure everyone got paid right and all the paperwork was done on time. Ryan took care of the day-to-day, making sure his 8 teams, that's 52 people, were all set up. Half of these folks had been in the military. They were a solid bunch, always on top of things. Word about Ryan's business spread because of how good his team was. Today, Ryan had 3 teams in a small Texas town, far from the city bustle, all working hard. He joked about being there to oversee the work, but really, he was avoiding his wife. He just couldn't be around her anymore. No, he muttered into his coffee. Not going through that again. Fool me once. Shame on me. Not gonna let it happen again. He couldn't forgive her for cheating a second time. He wasn't sure why he stayed the first time, but he knew he wouldn't stay now. He had a plan, and it was almost ready. After finding a recording of her first slip-up, he started leaving a recorder in her car every day, switching it out to listen later. He was shocked to hear her bad-mouthing him, his business, their friends, pretty much everything about their life together. He heard her change their past over and over. Some stuff she said he did, like how he was mean to her, just wasn't true. He never hit her or hurt her like she said. A lot of what she said was made up. He couldn't get why his wife was lying like this. Bit by bit, Ryan figured things out. Even though he was careful, some stuff still slipped past him. He saw now that many of their friends heard her complaints. He could tell by the way they looked at him. Some friends they used to hang out with now stayed away from him. At parties, he felt why they were cold and distant. It was all because of Carrie's lies. He got why her brother and sisters didn't talk to him much. He saw why her parents barely spoke to him now. Her lies made him change his plan. At first, he thought he would just tell her he knew and was going to leave. In Texas, you can divorce without blaming anyone, and it just takes 60 days to be official. But now he wanted to prove she was lying, especially about seeing someone else. He decided to go through a full divorce trial. He wanted to use it to share his side. He'd get his lawyer to fight her requests and make tough demands. There would be lots of arguing and back and forth. It might cost him everything, but he didn't care. If he lost his business, at least she wouldn't get part of his small company that was starting to do well. He had no way to show most of what she said was false. Most stuff she said was happening just didn't. And it was real hard to show that things didn't happen. She kept saying he hurt her. She told people on her phone and he heard it. He thought he could fight back on that. He often dreamed about standing in court and showing his strong muscles, asking if anyone really thought he could hurt Carrie without her ending up in the hospital for a long time. But it was just a dream. It wouldn't happen, but it helped him not lose it during the hard nights. Carrie's lies hurt Ryan a lot. He felt she needed to be called out. He didn't get why she was trying so hard to ruin how others saw him. It wasn't right, but he felt stuck. Feeling stuck only made it all feel worse. He was getting more and more mad and didn't know how much longer he could hold it in. He knew himself pretty well. He wasn't the type to just take this kind of thing without fighting back. He laughed to himself as he looked out the cafe window, remembering something his therapist said. Dr. Christopher had told Ryan back when he was seeing him that he was a bit quick to get mad. Ryan had laughed with the doctor. He knew it was true. That's why he stopped carrying his Glock lately. He was scared he'd do something he'd regret. Before, he'd have used it to keep Carrie safe. Now there was nothing left. She wasn't worth the risk anymore. If he shot her or Sean, he'd be in Huntsville prison for a long time. He didn't think she was worth that trouble. He really didn't want to end up in prison. His mind wasn't focused on anything. He had nothing urgent to think about, so his thoughts just drifted. He wasn't trying to solve his troubles. His mind just wandered while he waited for his breakfast. He hated jails. Even a short time inside had made him dislike them a lot. The judge had been easy on him for hitting his wife's first guy and hurting Carrie too. The person in charge of the case decided to make it a lesser charge, and the judge agreed. Because of this, Ryan's lawyer convinced him not to ask for a trial by a group of people. He only got 40 hours of community work and 30 days in local jail, not nearly as bad as a state prison. They even let him go after just 7 days in jail, with the rest suspended. He could go to work during the day. After a year and a half without trouble, the judge wiped away the rest of his punishment. He had already done the 40 hours of community work and he didn't mind. He actually liked it, spending extra hours reading to kids at the library. Ryan heard that the guy with his wife was really mad about the light punishment. Marshall lost one part and the other healed slowly. But the man didn't complain officially. His wife told him it was okay since they already had 3 kids. Besides, she said, if he didn't stop talking and start making it right with her and the kids, she would cut off his last ball and make him eat it for dinner. They moved to Denver when he was better. The first time he saw them on a menu at a restaurant, Marshall felt sick when he found out what Rocky Mountain oysters really were. The family had to leave the place, with Marshall's wife giving a big smile and sorry to the woman who had just sat them down. The kids were just as pleased to have fried chicken at the KFC by the highway. Marshall never found out his wife told the story to friends back in San Antonio. News travels fast. The smile from the memory slowly went away. Another memory came in its place. On a work trip to Dallas a year back, he found a shop that was closing in a not-so-great mall. They sold all kinds of spy gadgets but picked a bad spot. The owner was moving to a big mall downtown, but he had to wait for a spot to open. He had to sell everything cheap or pay a lot to keep it in storage. Ryan got a bunch of small spy cameras, gadgets to listen in on phone calls, binoculars, a nice digital camera, 3 VCRs, and more gear for spying like a pro. He only started using the gear in the last 3 months. He hadn't needed to before. He hid the tiny spy cameras all over the house, unsure where Carrie might bring her new man if she did when she took him home. Turns out she had no problem using Ryan and hers bed for a sec with Sean, when Ryan was off hunting with her dad. Ryan was mad about her choice of place, but deep down, he kinda saw it coming. She didn't care for him much at all these days, almost like she was bound to pull such a move. He'd set up 3 of his 12 cams in the main bedroom, capturing it all. Carrie and Sean getting busy in there were main acts in the video Ryan was putting together for her folks and their pals. He also guessed the bank, where Sean was a big shot, might want to see the vids he had of Sean in the buff, working on his laptop in Ryan and Carrie's kitchen. Sean had hooked up to the net using the phone line by the table. Ryan thought he bet Sean was tapping into the bank stuff, working away while cooling off from the wild stuff he was up to with his worker. The cherry on top was getting them on tape chatting about Sean and Carrie's kin and their shared buddies while taking breaks from their cheating fun. Ryan planned to pick those bits to show to the family and friends who got fooled by Carrie's fibs. He was eager to show them the true colors of the cheating duo. He had all he needed, just waiting on the right time. "Excuse me, mister?" The cafe lady seemed taken aback when Ryan didn't snap to right away. He was usually on the ball. "I'm sorry," Ryan said. "Guess I zoned out there a bit." He blinked. Those bad thoughts and plans had gripped him tight. It wasn't the first time he'd struggled to come back to now. "Oh, it's okay, hun," she said. "Look, it's super busy this morning, you see, and I was wondering if you'd be okay sharing your table with Connie and little Belinda here?" Ryan looked around, only now noticing that indeed every seat was taken, though he spotted some other spots with room. He was a bit taken aback when the hostess chatted to him about letting strangers share his big table. He didn't really want to, but it looked like he had no choice. Then he caught sight of the tall, lovely woman with sleek dark hair standing next to the waitress, and the small girl with her. In just a moment, he felt a whole lot better about the situation. It took him a second to snap out of it. Realizing he was still sitting, he quickly got up, a bit awkwardly. "Sorry," he said to them. "I was taught to be nice. I mean, I am, but sometimes I'm a bit slow," he added. He gave the waitress's arm a gentle touch. I'd be happy if, Connie and Belinda would sit with me," he managed to say, trying to remember their names. "Thank you," chirped the little girl in a clear young voice. Ryan was waiting for the woman to speak. He hadn't expected the girl to answer. He looked down, but the girl had already gone around him and was climbing on the bench. "Can I have my boost seat, please?" she asked in a sweet voice, pointing behind him. Ryan, confused, turned to the woman he thought was her mom, then noticed the waitress offering him the booster seat. "Oh, sorry," Ryan said, feeling bad. He took the seat from the waitress and helped the girl into it on the bench. "Thanks," she said, beaming at him. Ryan was about to sit across the table when the girl stopped him. "I want my mom to sit there," she said firmly. She pointed to the bench across. "You sit here." The girl pointed to the spot next to hers. Ryan looked up at the girl's mom, confused and a bit sorry. "She's so shy, right?" the woman asked, her voice deep but soft. She smiled big and waved him over to sit. "If it's okay with you, I don't mind," she added. The little girl's big smile made the choice for Ryan. "I'd be glad to sit with you," he said to the child, pretending to be very formal. He moved into the booth next to her. He saw joy in her eyes and smiled back. It had been a long while since he'd felt so welcome. "I'm Ryan," he said, introducing himself. "Connie, Consuela Robertson," the woman said. "And that's Belinda, the little troublemaker of Vargas Preschool," pointing at the blonde kid next to Ryan. "Mom," Belinda said, upset. "That's mean." Ryan laughed, totally taken by the woman and her daughter. The woman reached out her hand and they shook hands. He liked how her hand felt. It was thin, very ladylike, but strong too. He looked at her. "Do folks call you Connie or Consuela?" he asked straight. She paused, looking at him a bit wary. "I like Consuela," she said, "but Connie is fine too. Many people call me that," she rushed to add. "Consuela is a pretty name," Ryan said. "It suits you more than Connie, I think. Can I call you Consuela?" he asked. He waited for her reply, which didn't come right away. He thought maybe he'd messed up. "I think I'd like that," she finally said. The two women sitting behind Ryan looked at each other. They smiled with a hidden meaning. Consuela had moved here just after her baby was born, coming back after a bad marriage ended. Little Belinda was 4.5 now. It was the first time anyone saw Consuela. Connie, to some, seemed to enjoy a man's company. On Wednesday, Ryan waited for Consuela and Belinda to show up before he got his breakfast. When they walked in, Belinda broke away from her mom and dashed to him. She jumped into the air and he caught her. "Linda," her mom said, catching up. "You're not to do that." "It's okay, Mommy," the 4-year-old said. "Mr. Ryan caught me. That was that for her." She moved on to another thing. "Today, I'm going to sit on his lap and eat breakfast," she said. "Sweetie, even though he caught you, what if he didn't see you or something? Plus, you don't know if Mr. Ryan wants you to sit with him or have breakfast with us." Belinda looked at Ryan quickly, then back at her mom. "He does," Belinda said, sure of herself. Ryan cleared his throat. "It's true, but to make it all proper," he said, "Miss Robertson, would you and the lovely Belinda like to have breakfast with me?" He said it in a light way. He and the woman laughed as they took their seats at the table they picked that morning. Belinda sat on his lap for much of the meal, sitting up to eat bits from his plate or hers, then laying back against him. Near the end of the meal, she got antsy. When a friend came in with her folks, Belinda climbed down to go see her. This left Ryan and Consuela alone for the first time. All of a sudden, things felt weird. They didn't know what to say. "You don't remember me, do you?" Consuela asked out of the blue. Ryan tilted his head and looked at her closely. He looked at her for a while. Her long, dark hair made the shape of her face stand out. Her skin was light and clear. She wore just a bit of makeup, only some black stuff on her eyelashes and shiny stuff on her lips. Her dark eyes didn't even need it to look pretty. Her lips were full, and yes, he thought they looked very nice to kiss. He noticed when he stood up, her head reached just below his chin. She must be around 5 feet and a bit tall. She was slim but had curves in all the right places, and her legs, from the quick looks he got, were amazing. "Consuela," he finally said, "if I'd seen you before, I'm sure I'd remember. I don't usually forget beautiful women." He spoke seriously. Consuela blushed a bit, feeling his gaze and hearing his words. "It was just twice and really quick," she replied. "At the bank where your wife works? Once, the girl next to me helped you with a check while your wife was with you. That was before I moved to Mr. Michael's area. And another time, Carrie waved at me while you were there, and you looked back to see who it was. Maybe a year and 3 months back, or even a year and a half." Ryan shook his head. He tried to remember seeing her at the bank, but he just couldn't. "I'm sorry," he said. "If I was with Carrie, I was probably talking to her or paying her attention, or at least trying to," he added, feeling a bit silly. "So you do forget women sometimes, huh?" Consuela smiled, making light of it. "I must have been really distracted," Ryan said, laughing too. "If I was with Carrie, she'd be trying to keep all my attention on her, at least back then." "I know," said Consuela. She locked eyes with Ryan for a moment. She thought she saw something when they talked about Carrie. "How's Carrie doing?" she asked all of a sudden. She could tell by his look something was up. "You know, don't you?" she said, feeling sorry for him. Ryan made a face. Consuela just shrugged. "I left there 2 months back. Everyone at the bank, even the folks who saw them together, knows what's happening." Ryan let out a soft laugh and shook his head, his eyes full of worry. "They're not hiding it, are they?" She shook her head. "At first they tried, but many of us knew what was up. From what friends still there tell me, it's getting more and more." "Clear?" Ryan guessed. "Worse." "Brazen is what I was going to say," Consuela answered. "If it means anything, I'm sorry. Everyone thinks Mr. Michaels is no good. Nobody gets what Carrie sees in him." "I'm sorry as well," Ryan said in a low voice. "I've had doubts for 3 months and been gathering proof for a couple of weeks," he shared. "I think I have enough now against both of them," he added. Consuela looked surprised at him. "That's a strong way to put it," she finally said. Ryan saw she was getting eager. Her eyes sparkled, her breath quickened. She quickly looked around to check on Belinda. I didn't leave my job in San Antonio the way I said I did," she admitted. "I left because I made a sexual harassment report against Shawn Michaels and it went all the way to the main office in Chicago," she said. Ryan was patient. He had been waiting since Monday for Consuela to open up. He felt there was more to it. After some time, a few months, the complaint was sent back. The Chicago office said they couldn't prove it, so they did nothing. Consuela's face turned red with anger as she remembered. Her eyes shone with fury. "After that, I got a couple of bad job reviews. 3 times my job tasks had small and quick-to-fix account issues, and they called me out," she said with a sharp tone. "A bit of looking, and they all sorted out, but that didn't seem to count. They didn't fuss over others for stuff that needed a checkup, but me, they hit hard." Consuela moved in her chair, her anger clear about how they treated her. It made her feel small and mad at the same time. Ryan nodded her way, hoping she'd go on. They sent me to the investment side for a bit, but then a lady came back from having her baby and suddenly there was no spot for me. They hinted I'd have to go back to the front desk job. Worse, I'd work all weekends and soon a late shift at the drive-thru that was going to stay open late. They knew I had a young girl at home. That schedule wouldn't work for me. Consuela's tone showed her upset and anger. She took a breath and tried to smile when she saw Belinda waving at her. They made it kinda easy for me to leave, I'll admit, she added. They never said it, but it was clear I could leave and they'd still say good stuff about me. If I stayed, I'd barely see my girl. She'd not know me. And if I made a big deal, I'd be out of banking for good. She was trying to control her breathing, sitting restless. Her hands kept moving in her lap. Consuela's upset and anger were thick in the air, mixing with Ryan's own. They felt so strong, almost like they could touch them. Consuela closed her eyes tight, trying for calm. Slowly, she stopped shaking. Her face softened, her shoulders dropped. "Hi, Mommy," came the unexpected small voice. Belinda hadn't seen her mom crying when she walked back. "Mommy," Belinda said, looking scared. "You're crying?" Consuela's eyes popped open hearing Belinda. She bent down and showed her wide-open eyes, no tears there. She put on a smile. "No, sweetie," Consuela told her. "I just closed my eyes to think," she said. Belinda seemed unsure, but she didn't say more. "Tasha and her family are eating, so I came here," she said to her mom. "I'm happy you did," Ryan said. He lifted her up and put her on his knee. "Now," he said, "I still don't know your ticklish spots." Belinda wiggled on his knee, ready for tickles. She put her hands up to her neck to guard it. Ryan tickled her sides for a bit. When Belinda moved her hands, he went for her neck and she laughed loud. "Linda," Consuela said fast, "you shouldn't." "My bad," Ryan said. "I should know this, right, Belinda? Hug me and I'll stop," he said. Belinda didn't want him to stop, but she knew what to do. She hugged Ryan tight. "I've got something to tell you," Consuela said. Kids were making a lot of noise in the big plastic tubes above. She had to get close to Ryan so he could hear her without yelling. Ryan had picked the McDonald's near the highway for dinner because he knew Belinda would like the play area. She could barely sit to eat her chicken bits and a few fries. This was the first dinner Ryan had with them besides breakfast. And the first time they met twice in one day. Wednesday was full of news for them. Ryan looked at Consuela, taking in her words. "You had things to tell me about Carrie and about some trouble at work you had since Monday?" he guessed. Consuela's eyes got big, then small again. "You knew?" she asked, her voice tight. He could tell she was quick to anger even though he'd only met her 3 days ago. To keep things calm, he shook his head. "I guess Trish had a reason to seat you with me," he said, trying to sound careful. Trish was the main waitress and hostess at the cafe who had looked out for Ryan since he started coming to the cafe. She had spent time talking with Consuela and Ryan when they paid for their breakfast that morning. The chat was nice. At first, I thought maybe it was because I looked good. But then I saw my face in the mirror, he joked, hoping to keep things light. "So I thought maybe you wanted to talk or needed something from me after I thought of some other reasons that didn't seem right for you," he added softly. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. And until then, I was enjoying the time with you and Belinda more than I have in a long while," he told her. Consuela blushed a bit, which suited her. "I guess I should have just told you since I recognized you on Monday," she said quietly. She wanted to be mad at Ryan for guessing she wanted to talk about something serious, but she just couldn't. He was honest, and that made it hard for her to stay mad. "It's okay," Ryan said. "I liked being with you. I already said that." He looked at her curious. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Consuela took a big breath. "We didn't cover everything today. My problem at work isn't just a complaint anymore. I went ahead and took it to federal court 3 weeks back. I was wondering, hoping you could say out loud that Shawn Michaels is seeing my wife," she said. "My lawyer doesn't know you yet, but she said if we can show that Mr. Michaels keeps doing what he tried with me, we might win." She stopped trying to explain and looked at Ryan. "Me too," she added in a small voice. Ryan looked confused for a moment, not sure what he missed. Me and Belinda liked, eating breakfast with you," Consuela tried to explain. Ryan's face cleared and he smiled. "I'm happy," he said softly. after a quiet moment. "If it helps, I'll say what I know about the affair," he said, going back to the first topic. "I don't know much about lawyer stuff, but I'll speak to what I can," he said. "You're sure?" Consuela asked quietly. "You can say you know that he's actually sleeping with my wife?" Ryan asked. Consuela nodded, too shy to say it. "Yes, I can say that," Ryan promised her. Consuela looked at him, her eyes full of sudden pity. "Maybe not," she said slowly. "Maybe you shouldn't. There could be tough questions." Ryan smiled, a cold, sharp smile. "Consuela, my marriage is done. She broke our vows. They're totally broken now. My marriage ended the moment she got together with Shawn Michaels. I've been gathering proof for the court to show she cheated. I'm going to tell everyone to show what she did, what she's doing. I'm divorcing Carrie to make it official, but it's been over for a while. I've watched her for months, letting the love I once had for her fade away." Consuela looked at Ryan. She saw a new side of him, his blue eyes now a cold shade as his anger grew. She believed him. He meant to show Shawn Michaels a lesson. A slow smile grew on her face. "You're strong to do what you plan, Ryan. Mr. Michaels picked the wrong guy to mess with," she said in a soft voice. Ryan was caught off by her words. His anger faded a bit and he smiled at the pretty lady sitting with him. But then her face took on a serious look. "You got proof, right?" she asked. "Pictures or something?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah, I have videos of them together, recordings from phone chats and tapes of her talking about her lover in her car. I got a lot," Ryan shared. "The phone chats might not be useful in court unless she lies about them. Then they can be used to show she's lying. The videos of her being close with him in the bank, on streets, and entering our house can be used. The ones of her and him in our bed are probably okay too. I believe I have the right to record what happens in my house. They show a lot, let's say." "Oh, wow," Consuela whispered. "I'm sorry. It's sad you saw that, but you've caught them both, huh?" Ryan laughed. "Oh, yes," he stressed, happy with his proof. "Got him too," he added. "I haven't talked to a lawyer yet, but I have my own case to make, you know." Ryan looked over Carrie's contract again and saw a clear rule about behavior right there on the second page. It was easy to spot, not hidden at all. He thought if Carrie's contract had this rule, Michaels must have it too. If the bank didn't follow its own rules, they should be in trouble, right? Ryan paused, then said, "Like I told you, I'm not a lawyer, but I think we can help each other with these things. You could say in my court case that there's what's the word? A way they always do things, and they didn't, try to stop it. Wonder what the legal term for that is?" He smiled, thinking he should talk to a lawyer about this. For the first time in a while, he saw a way he might keep his business going even after the divorce took its toll. Texas law said that if one person in a marriage did something wrong, like cheating, it could change how things are split in the divorce. Ryan was already hoping to use that to his advantage, and now he thought he might get even more money from a court case to buy Carrie out of the business. Thursday in the cafe was a letdown. Ryan was there, like usual, but Consuela wasn't. Ryan knew it was because she had to go to the bank early, where she was assistant manager. The regulars felt sorry for Ryan eating alone, but they missed he had a book with him for company while he waited for his omelet. He wouldn't have brought a book if he expected someone to join him. The book was a Western by Louis L'Amour. Ryan loved Westerns. They told stories of a time when a man could make a name for himself with just boldness, guts, and not taking any nonsense from anyone. It worked in the tales of L'Amour's heroes, time and time. In this book, there was a side tale about a young wife who picked a bad man as her lover, though he was quick on the draw. Her simple farm husband had tried to face the bad man with his gun, but it was a lost fight from the start. The poor farmer met a hard end when the wife's lover shot him down. Ryan felt a kinship with the farm lad. Against all odds, he had picked up a gun, an item he wasn't used to fight for his wife and his pride. It wasn't the smartest move, but Ryan got why the man couldn't stand the thought of doing nothing. Ryan got him, really got him. The omelet that morning was top-notch. Trish had winked at the cook to throw in extra bits of the mushrooms and sausage Ryan was fond of. He got treats even some of the old-timers didn't get. A couple of folks spotted the thick omelet and knew right off that Ryan had won Trish's favor. Following her lead, Ryan and Consuela picked a Golden Corral spot a bit away from San Antonio for their Thursday night meetup. Meeting here cut down the risk of running into someone they knew. It made sense since he was still tied in marriage, and folks wouldn't get that they were plotting lawsuits against a big bank, its local branch in San Antonio, and a few of its top dogs. Ryan noted how Consuela asked things and talked, moving her fork like she was leading an orchestra. "It's in her blood," she said. Her granny had lived in a tiny spot down in Mexico. She needed her hands free to get her words out right. Ryan joked that if her hands were tied back, it'd be like she was gagged. She paused, then stuck her tongue out at him. He let out a real laugh, something he hadn't done in who knows when. She was taken aback to learn his great-grandpa was fully from the Comanche tribe. She peered at his face, noting his high cheekbones seemed to be the only trace from that heritage. His blue eyes and blonde hair clearly came from another line. They ended up agreeing that their Scottish and Irish roots probably covered up most of their family genes. Consuela asked if Ryan knew about the Irish dance schools in San Antonio, or that they had a big dance contest in a city hotel every year. Ryan had no clue. Consuela said he should go next October. He said he would if she'd join him. She agreed. They quieted down to focus on their meal for a bit. "Can we use the videos in court even for divorce?" she finally asked. Ryan shrugged. "I think a smart lawyer could find a way to use them," he answered after a pause. "If not, I'll turn the DVDs into Christmas gifts for her family and our friends," he said with a smirk. "I thought you mentioned videotapes," Consuela said casually, finishing her salad. "I did. I do," Ryan answered. "But I got a super-fast computer recently for work, and I installed a program that changes movies from a digital camera into DVD format." He noticed her puzzled look. "Ah, first I had to play the VHS tapes and record it with my digital camera," he explained. "Seems like a lot of effort," she mentioned. "Yeah, not the smoothest way," he replied. "But I'm trying to do this detective work cheap and didn't want to ask too many questions given what it's about. I had to be a bit creative." "I think you did a great job," Consuela said quickly. "You have way more evidence for what you're planning than I do," she added. Ryan paused to think over her words. It felt nice to get a pat on the back for something good he did, not just getting told off like Carrie always did now. "Well," he said, taking a bite of his steak with sauce, "I think I can help us out. Got a few pics of the geek at our kitchen table, but naked but working on his laptop." "No way," Consuela said. "For real?" She went red, torn between happy and shy from what Ryan said. "Yep," Ryan answered. "Logging into a network, getting into a server, doing some money stuff." "What's his job again?" "He's in charge of the fancy money stuff for super rich folks," she said. "He looks after their money, makes bets for them if they say so, watches over their trust funds, moves money to other banks when they want, stuff like that." Ryan thought for a bit. "Moves money? Wire moves," she said after a drink. "Like Western Union, kind of?" "Yeah, but way bigger," she said. "Millions fly around every day." "I see," he said, thinking hard. They really trust him with that? He wondered aloud. He laughed. If they saw him failing to type his password and yelling at his laptop like a brat because it won't work, I doubt they'd trust him much. Might send a rich dude's cash to the wrong place. He's really bad with computers. Consuela laughed too. "Couldn't get his password right, huh? You saw that?" "Yep, tried over and over, never worked," Ryan said. "Carrie had to come down, both as naked as the day they were born, and she did it for him. That's a big no-no. I bet the bank wouldn't like that one bit." He paused, thinking. "I just know we might not need to hit the court," he said. "The bank folks won't like the buzz. Once I spill what I got, they'll bend over to make us a deal. Cool, right?" "You might be onto something," Consuela nodded. "He types in his secret word for you to see, and Carrie knows it too?" she mused. "Yep," Ryan said. Consuela let out a huff. "Such a dope," she said with a scoff. "I was only let in on the small stuff. He can touch every account, do tricks," she said. "Big mistake letting someone else know your secret word," she shook her head. "True that," Ryan nodded. "Lucky Carrie kept quiet," Consuela said, taking a sip. "She'd wreck him if she wanted." "Sure could," Ryan thought out loud. "I could too," he added slowly. "Saw him type it enough times." "Good thing you're a good guy?" Consuela shot him a smile. Ryan shook his head. "I wouldn't bet on that," he said. "Can't stand him or her," he added. They shared a laugh. "You into Louis L'Amour?" she asked, eyeing the book Ryan had. She was late and had warned him. "Oh yeah," Ryan perked up. "Him and Tom Clancy both can spin a yarn." "Got it," she said. "What's Louis L'Amour's thing?" They chatted more. They were generous to the waitress. She was good to them, keeping the tea coming, letting them stay long after they were done eating. On her way home, Consuela Robertson thought about her talks with Ryan Gilchrist tonight. It felt nice to be with a good-looking man after so long. It took her years to get over her divorce. She hadn't trusted men for a long time, but she trusted him. He listened to her, and he was big and strong, she thought. But he was also kind to Belinda. He didn't think he was good-looking at all. He had said something about it last night, but he was. He talked well, too. He didn't rush to say she was wrong when they talked. It was nice to be with him. Her mind was busy as she drove into the gravel driveway. She sat in the car for a bit with the lights off. It was a habit she got while living in Albuquerque when she first got married. Their house was near one gang's area and too close to another. The sounds of gunshots were common most weekends. She had learned to check the dark before getting out. It was important to know who was there before stepping out. There was no one in the dark here. She knew there was some gang stuff in San Antonio, but it hadn't reached here yet. The neighborhood wasn't very pretty, but her neighbors were all retired people or hard-working folks with different jobs in the area. She sighed. Sometimes she felt her neighborhood was like her life. She was nearly 30 years old. Time was moving just like the houses on her block. The houses needed some care, and the air felt a bit sad because that care was not happening fast. Some of her neighbors had already lost hope. She moved her shoulders and shook her head to get rid of the feeling. She got out of her 9-year-old Mercury and walked next door to Mrs. Alvarez to pick up Belinda. A bit later, as she was getting her little girl ready for bed, Consuela caught herself daydreaming. A thought had popped up. A plan that grew and set in her mind in just a moment. She wanted to get back at someone. But what would Ryan think of her plan? What would he think of her? She now knew she cared a lot about his opinion. "Do you want to check out the DVDs?" Ryan asked, puzzled. It was Friday night, usually a time for fun, but that wasn't really Consuela's thing as far as he knew. Plus, the baby was right in the next room. Belinda was supposed to be sleeping, but she fought it. She didn't want to miss out with Ryan around. It was his first visit. Belinda had jumped onto Ryan's lap when he arrived and didn't want to leave his side. Ryan didn't help much with Consuela's efforts to separate them. The little 4-year-old was really getting to him. "Lady, those aren't just for fun, you know? There's a lot of sex and talking about it, and not being nice to others. It's just not—" I know, Consuela cut in. She tried to hide her blush that started in her neck. Ryan watched her for a moment, then smiled. "I was joking. The videos aren't even good. Most are boring. If you want to watch, I guess it's okay." He was poking fun. He didn't think she really wanted to watch those kinds of videos. There was something else he was missing. He saw her blush spread to her ears. No, she said quickly. She looked for the right words. "Look, Ryan, do you remember the book we talked about last night, right?" Ryan thought for a moment. He still didn't get it. "Yeah." Consuela licked her lips. Ryan noticed and almost missed what she said next. "You get why that farm boy wanted to hurt his wife's lover, right?" she asked. "And you said you don't know why you didn't hurt your wife's first lover, right? Didn't you say that just last night? And that you stopped carrying your gun because you were scared of what you might do to Shawn Michaels if you saw him?" Ryan nodded. They had shared many secrets last night. He told Consuela things he never told anyone else. Consuela started to pace. Her house was tiny, just 3 steps from couch to TV. She moved back and forth, quick and worried. "We can make that jerk a lot more upset than just firing him," she said. Ryan was shocked. She called Shawn a cabron with so much anger. The word meant a male goat, but was also a swear word for a very bad person. It showed how mad Consuela was at him. He thought about what to do while she paced. Consuela wanted revenge on Mr. Shawn Michaels. She was angry because Michaels had asked her to meet him for sex at an apartment near the downtown bank 6 months ago. He didn't take no for an answer and kept on her for weeks before trying to get her fired. Ryan, though, was more upset at his wife for cheating than at the man she was with, but he still had plenty of anger for Michaels. Carrie hadn't even taken off her wedding ring when with Michaels. It was there in all the videos Ryan had of them cheating. Even if Shawn Michaels hadn't known Ryan and they had bumped into each other a few times, he was sure he was in bed with a man's wife. In a time long gone, like in the old days of Ryan's great-great-granddad, Ryan could have gone after Michaels and shot him on the spot. Ryan thought of an old Wild West book he had read. He always felt he was born too late. He wanted some revenge on the man who had shamed him. He smiled a tough smile. "What's your plan?" he asked. "So what do you think?" Consuela asked, a bit scared. She sat at the edge of the couch. She looked at Ryan, worried. She wasn't sure how he'd take her idea. It was dangerous and very much against the law. Ryan walked back and forth for a while. He was a mostly good guy. Not too strict on himself, though. Dealing with a local union when his small business grew taught him everyone had a bit of greed. The money he was paying to a fake security company to keep union troubles away was shady. He didn't want the union meddling in his work, and they were okay as long as they got paid. He wasn't sure if paying them off was illegal, but it was definitely wrong for the union guy to ask for it. Ryan had kept quiet so far, but this plan of Consuela's was a big jump into the deep end of breaking the law. Could he handle it? "It's a big gamble," he said after a while. "Very big." He then sat down across from her and leaned back, thinking with his eyes shut. "But not too big if we're clever," he said after a bit. "And if we don't get too greedy," adding more thought. "How do we set up bank accounts for the wire transfers?" he then asked. Consuela paused before answering, clearly nervous. "My mom's Uncle Roberto lives down in Mexico City," she kind of whispered. "He's got this company that deals with bringing stuff in and out of the country and goes all around the Caribbean for work. He knows a ton of folks. Some of them have friends." Her voice just kind of faded away. They didn't say anything about her hint that her great-uncle knew all sorts of people, some who could keep secrets if the price was right. "We've got the secret codes," he thought out loud, "but no one's got a clue we do. Really, no one would ever guess we could." He paused for a bit. "Unless they see my video," he said, looking straight at Consuela. "All this better be worth giving up my payback on my wife," he told her, real soft. "Why?" She looked puzzled. "You can still show the bits when she was with that guy, just not the kitchen stuff." She stopped. Ryan was shaking his head. "No. If someone thinks I had spy cams in one spot, they'll wonder why not more. Get it?" She did. It was too clear to argue. Ryan closed his eyes again and leaned his head back. "I used cash for the cams and all," he said, kind of thinking out loud. "That's all the seller wanted. The dude was in a rush, selling off his stuff for fast cash. Didn't get any paper with my name on it. All this was up in Dallas way over a year ago. No real paper trail. Sure, there's a cash receipt, but I know where it is. I can just burn it. Then there's nothing. He likely has a record of selling it, but it doesn't say it's to me. He never asked my name, and I never said it. He didn't know me at all and couldn't point me out now, even if the cops did find him and have a chat. No worries there. We can trash the VHS tapes, the DVDs, the tape recordings, the cameras, tape decks, all of it. It's all in one spot in my garage, and all the proof I got is in my truck," he said, talking to the air as if thinking out loud. "We'll toss all of it after cleaning off my prints for sure. I didn't make any holes in the wall for the cameras or anything," he thought. "They were just hidden in spots I knew Carrie wouldn't look." He laughed a bit. "Not really the housekeeper type, she isn't." What else? Am I forgetting anything?" They kept talking deep into the night, all about how to get rid of the tons of stuff he had on his wife. It was tough to let it all go, but it was vital that no one figured Ryan had been snooping around. If they did, there might be tricky questions about what he found. Better not risk it. Consuela wasn't sure how she'd get to Michael's laptop, but Ryan had it figured out. Michaels and Carrie were always in a rush when they got to the house. The laptop was dumped on the sofa each time, left there till one of them came back down. Ryan also had a plan for him and Consuela to get to the Gilchrist's place without anyone noticing. Behind the house there was a big wild area filled with thick bushes and trees. Ryan had looked around there after they moved in. He knew the way from a street on the far side of the empty land straight to their backyard. It was just a short walk. 5, maybe 10 minutes at most. Once there, the metal fence around the yard could be climbed over by anyone fit. He and Consuela were in top shape. Jumping the fence would be easy for them. At the house, the back door slid open and shut with no noise. He could leave it unlocked when he left for work. He'd go after Carrie had left, and he was sure Carrie wouldn't check it when she came back with her special friend. The back door led right into the dining room, and just a few steps away was the kitchen with the phone line. The couch in the living room where the laptop would be was just through a big door from the dining room. Getting out would just mean walking back the way they came. They weren't sure how long Consuela would have with the laptop. They planned to time the breaks Michaels and Carrie took with a stopwatch from the VHS tapes. They thought they'd only have one chance, but then realized they could do this a few times. It had to be quick, say within a week, but that would be enough to take a lot of money from the bank and make them feel it. Ryan thought Carrie would love to have her friend over if she thought Ryan was away. In fact, she was likely with Sean every day this week while he was gone. He'd find out when he got back home. There'd be new tapes because he left all the cameras running. They stopped planning for the night, too worn out to think anymore. Before they split up, they made a pact never to jot things down on paper or a computer again. The notes they had to remind themselves of stuff to dig into, and other times they had no choice but to take notes, would be watched closely. Once they were done with them, they'd burn them and get rid of the dust in a safe spot. They also decided they'd never make calls from numbers that could be linked back to them. They could not tell anyone else about this, and most of all, they could not be caught hanging out together in public until this was all over. Saying goodbye was the hardest part. Even though they had only been pals for 5 days, they felt close. It was tough to know they had to stay apart to avoid drawing eyes. Ryan headed back to his motel and Consuela went to sleep after making sure Belinda was okay. The little one would be sad in the morning when she found Ryan gone. Come Saturday afternoon, Ryan found even more proof of Carrie cheating. He wouldn't have bothered with it, but he needed to check the timing between their hookups. He wasn't looking for an average or longest time he and Consuela had. He wanted to know the shortest they'd have. After watching, he figured they'd have about 25 minutes each time for Consuela to work her magic. Carrie and Sean never hooked up for less than 30 minutes, and just once it was that quick. Ryan thought if he and Consuela kept their visits under 25 minutes, they'd avoid getting caught. That gave them a 5-minute safety net. In the garage, he tossed all the tapes and most of the cameras and recorders into a box. He put the box on the passenger side of his pickup. Carrie hadn't been near the truck for over a year, so it was a good spot to hide anything. On Sunday, he drove to Austin and got 6 cheap phones. Ryan and Consuela would use them to talk while pretending not to. They couldn't be tracked, and he paid in cash at different small shops to keep it secret. He made sure the shops didn't have cameras before he went in. He either smiled a bit or kept his face calm, and was nice to everyone. No one would think twice about a man in plain clothes. Over the weekend, Carrie was either cold or just ignored him. Ryan was fine with that. He didn't want to be around her more than needed, and didn't want to sleep with her at all. She slept a lot that weekend. Ryan thought she was just tired and left her alone to rest. He was looking forward to what he and Consuela had planned for Carrie and her Mr. Shawn Michaels. On Monday night, from her aunt's house, Consuela called her great-uncle Roberto, asking her aunt to leave the room. Her aunt really wanted to know what was up, but was okay with waiting. She thought she'd find out one day. Great-uncle Roberto wouldn't usually answer calls from numbers he didn't know, but after talking to Consuela, he was ready for any call from 6 special numbers. Consuela wrapped up the call with normal family talk, like she always did with him. Ryan took a trip to her place one late day, in a car his worker lent him. The worker needed his big truck to get supplies from San Antonio on Tuesday, and even suggested this swap. Ryan thought he and Consuela should use rental cars for their visits. He wasn't sure how to avoid leaving a trail of card payments, but he had ideas. Maybe put the rental on a card and then pay in cash or leave a big cash deposit. He'd figure something out. When Belinda's mom left her with Ryan and went to her aunt's, Belinda was happy. Ryan liked it too. When Consuela got back and came in quietly, she saw her little girl in Ryan's arms, both sleeping in a big chair. She watched them for a while, letting her tears dry, before waking them up. Consuela was busy the next week, talking to her great-uncle whenever she could. He was also busy, making calls to people he knew in places like Belize, the Cayman Islands, Barbados, Bermuda, Antigua, Curacao, Aruba, Jamaica, and others Consuela hadn't heard of. Soon they had accounts set up in secure offshore banks. Some accounts were old but unused, and a few were brand new. Once everything was ready, Roberto had a plan to move money. It would go through a bank in London, then to the Swiss Credit Bank, from there to the Bank of Nigeria, and finally back around to a place in the Caribbean. He made lots of accounts because he knew his great-niece's plan wouldn't last long. There was no time for money to grow and no chance for normal bank moves to happen fast. A bit more than a week later, after great-uncle Roberto got everything set up, a happy young boy came to Consuela's door and gave her a CD. She was shocked, but took the CD case. When she looked up, the boy had gone without a word. The CD had a list that Consuela and Ryan put on an old laptop Ryan paid cash for. They couldn't keep all those accounts in their head, so they had this one risky thing with them. They destroyed the CD, breaking it and melting it down, then threw it in the San Antonio River. They thought they'd have to leave the money alone in an account for some years to stay off any radar. This wasn't a big deal. They planned to sue like they wanted all along. They believed they could win those suits. Their goal was to hit the bank and make it pay for not following its own rules. By taking money from very rich people's accounts, they made it look like Shawn Michaels and Carrie Gilchrist were in on a scam. The time in jail they'd get was better than the old days when they'd face much worse in this town. Ryan and Consuela believed the bank would pay back the rich people to keep them happy. The bank couldn't risk those customers leaving. Those rich folks would definitely fight to get their money back. The bank would have to eat the cost of another mess. This time, they'd learn to not let a boss bug a single mom or flirt with someone else's wife at work. Consuela's older cousin, once removed, Richard, would keep the laptop for them after they were done with their big plan. Richard didn't know much about computers and didn't care. He was a loner with no buddies. He barely talked to his own family. He lived in a shack with no modern stuff, hidden behind a big rock hill, way out where even the farmhands didn't go. He built his place there because the landowner owed him one from 20 years back. No one really knew what for. The only thing Consuela and Ryan cared about was how out of the way Richard's place was. No one could sneak up on him. Visitors had to shout out who they were from far off or risk getting a warning shot. They were sure the laptop would be safe with Richard, and Consuela convinced Ryan of this. About a month and a half after Ryan and Consuela teamed up, everything was set. The bank accounts were ready. The first set of burn phones they used to talk were smashed to bits and thrown out all over San Antonio. Ryan got rid of all the spy stuff and the recordings by burning them and dumping the ashes far away. They burned all their notes and tossed the ashes into the river south of town. The bin in the garage where he kept the books was now empty. He got rid of everything inside. He didn't want it to stand out, so he cleaned the whole garage, using a lot of cleaner and working hard. They were as ready as they could be. Their plan was for Ryan to stay home for a couple of weeks to mess with the secret meetups. He took time off work, telling Carrie he needed to rest after working so much. She couldn't really say no. Ryan was really nice all week. He visited Carrie at the bank a lot to have lunch with her or just to talk for a bit during her break. On Friday night, they went to a fancy dinner at a hotel by the Riverwalk. It was an event for the bank people after summer, but before the holidays. Ryan didn't go last year. He didn't like Carrie's co-workers much, but this year he was excited about it. Carrie tried to talk him out of it, but Ryan was set on going. He surprised her with a fancy suit he bought for the night, and he looked very nice. He even went to the barber and shaved well. She noticed his nails looked good and mentioned it. In his job, it was hard to keep nails nice. At the dance, Ryan stayed close to Carrie, even though she tried to get him to mix with other people. He smiled to himself when she introduced him to Shawn Michaels again. Ryan knew who he was from before. It was something to see, looking into the man's eyes and holding his hand tight when Carrie brought him to Shawn and his friends. The way his eyes got a bit bigger, and the hint of pain when Ryan squeezed hard made the fancy suit worth it. Ryan didn't notice until then how much taller he was than Mr. Michaels. It was clear Michaels didn't like it. Carrie didn't seem happy about how different the two men looked either. Ryan left Carrie's side soon after, but wasn't alone for long. Quite a few women, single or not, had seen how Ryan handled Michael's hand and wanted to get closer to the man who came out on top. Carrie looked annoyed when she saw him across the room with 3 women all trying to get his attention. Carrie looked even more worried when Ryan started talking again to Sean's wife, Sharon. They had met before at another event, but hadn't seen each other since then. Sharon, a pretty blonde, talked with Ryan for a while. Towards the end, something behind Ryan caught her eye. He looked back to find Carrie standing near Sean, smiling up at him. They were in a crowd. Nothing looked really wrong, but Sharon kept a close watch. When Ryan looked back at Sharon, he could just see a frown going away. Sadness was in her eyes, and she couldn't hide it. Ryan didn't know what to do. He didn't know her well enough to talk about what he thought. He wasn't sure how she would take it, and now wasn't the time or place for it. All the fake interest in being with Carrie, Ryan saw it as just for show and a part of a trap, slowed down in the second week. It had done its job. Carrie and Michaels were so scared they didn't even try to meet up because they were worried Ryan would pop up out of nowhere. Ryan did stop by the bank a few more times like he did the week before just to keep Carrie and Michaels on edge. But his visits were quick since he had other places to be. It worked. By the end of the second week, Carrie was clearly upset and nervous. It seemed like Sean was feeling the same way, not happy at all. Ryan and Consuela were happy with themselves. They had set things up just right. It was even easier than Ryan thought to get into the house on the day Carrie and Sean planned to meet, which was Sean's first day back at work. Ryan had managed to guess pretty much the exact time they would leave work that afternoon. He did this by taking Carrie out to lunch early. He told her on Sunday he'd pick her up on his way to a business thing in Austin. She said yes. She couldn't really say no the way Ryan said it. She picked a Taco Bell near the bank for lunch. Ryan figured she wanted a quick lunch to get him on the road fast. That was okay with him. He just wanted to make sure she and Sean couldn't leave work in the morning. This way, Ryan and Consuela didn't have to hang around the Gilchrist house all day waiting for them to show up. Instead of getting rental cars, Ryan and Consuela used plane cars from Consuela's family. Today, they were in a car from Consuela's cousin Alfredo. For the rest of the week, they would use different cars each day from people in Consuela's family and their friends. Consuela's aunt had talked to a bunch of people she trusted. She had a car, all ready to go, parked in a quiet spot with keys waiting under the mat every morning by 7 a.m. Both Consuela and Ryan, though Consuela's aunt didn't know Ryan was in on this, could use the car all day. When they brought it back, they'd leave some cash in 20s in an envelope under the mat for the car use. No one asked or told anything. Ryan had said to his top workers he was off to his old deer spot up near the small town called Marble Falls. He did this every year around the same time for some hunting, so no one thought it was odd, even if he had been off work for a couple weeks already. Before, the money wasn't there for such a long break. Everyone just wished him well with his hunting. Consuela wasn't feeling well. Told her boss it might be that bug going around, or worse, the flu since she hadn't gotten her shot. She was hoping to get better quick, maybe in a day or two. Her boss hoped she'd get better soon too. While Ryan and Consuela waited at a tiny BBQ place, they chatted about whatever came to mind. They found out they liked just sitting there talking. Being together for any reason started feeling special to them. Ryan left one bug behind, a listening device hidden at the back of a small table in the entrance. It was their way to know when Carrie and her boss showed up. Consuela had walked into the BBQ spot and came out with a bag of pulled pork sandwiches. She and Ryan had each had a few. Ryan was still peckish from his quick lunch with Carrie. But the real point of buying those was to give a good excuse for their plain car to be in the eat-out spot's lot. Finally, Ryan said, checking the time. He thought his wife and Michaels had had enough time to make up their stories after eating and sneak away for some secret fun. The sound of a key in the door lock was clear from the speaker on the car's dash. The happy voices right after made it sure. Carrie and her secret friend had got there. Quickly, Consuela and Ryan got out of their big gray Ford. They had to move fast, but with care. Checking around to see if anyone was watching, Ryan led Consuela through the small trees and thick bushes to the west of the eat-out spot. These trees and bushes ended right behind Ryan's place. They had talked about wearing black and maybe even masks, but dropped that idea fast. Looking like they wanted to be ninjas would make everyone look. They chose a wig to hide Consuela's real hair color instead. Plain, worn baseball hats and dark glasses and clothes that didn't stand out. Their clothes colors were soft greens, browns, and dark grays. Their shoes were simple and dark. The shoe sizes they got for this task were all over the place. Some days they'd wear too tight shoes for a little while. Other times, they wore extra socks and too big shoes. All they wore was clean but looked used, picked from Salvation Army and Goodwill stores in Austin, Dallas, and Houston. They bought nothing close to home. They had 6 sets of these. They thought they'd need 5 sets, but brought an extra one. Each day after wearing them, they would burn all the clothes and shoes. The bits like metal zips, small metal parts, buttons, and sunshades would be thrown deep into many lakes around the area. It only took 10 minutes, maybe a bit more, to get through the thick bush and small trees. They could have moved faster, but Ryan took Consuela on a winding path to avoid leaving any signs. It was easy to stick to hard soil or rock areas where their steps wouldn't mark. They planned to return the same way, with Ryan wiping away any signs they did leave. This path was for one-time use only. They left nothing to chance. At the edge of the woods, they put on their throwaway rubber gloves. They checked how they looked to make sure their simple disguises were still okay. Ryan gave Consuela a thumbs up, and with a worried smile, she did the same. They climbed over the fence and walked straight to the back door. They didn't rush. Their walk was made to seem normal. They looked around with their dark glasses on. No one was looking out from the house they were about to enter or the ones next to it. Once they walked into the yard, tall bushes hid them well from any neighbors who might have been watching. Ryan opened the back door quickly, knowing it well. He guessed right that Carrie hadn't locked up after returning home midday. They closed the glass door quietly behind them. He and Consuela moved to the side, out of view from anyone outside, and stood close. They barely breathed for a bit. Ryan checked his watch and showed it to Consuela. They had planned to leave the house by the 26-minute mark, done or not. She nodded. Ryan started the stopwatch and let his arm hang. They paused, just listening. They were new at this. Their hearts were up in their throats since they left the car. Their bodies were full of adrenaline and their hearts were beating fast. They needed this moment to focus. The sounds from upstairs told them the two were already busy. The noise of skin hitting skin was clear. "Oh God, Sean!" Carrie yelled. "Do that! It's been so long, dear!" Ryan's face was all lines. He froze in the kitchen doorway. The anger he had since learning about Carrie's second cheat had gone down over the past months as he and Consuela made this plan. Now, hearing the two lovers, the anger rushed back. He was about to step towards the stairs when Consuela's hand on his arm stopped him. He looked at her. She lifted her eyebrows, asking without words. They had agreed to stay silent until they were back in the car. Her touch calmed him a bit. Trying to hold back his anger, Ryan gave her a tense nod and a small smile. He took a deep breath. It was hard, but he stood firm, ready to listen for any sign that his wife and Michael's would come downstairs. He checked. Nope, he was not turned on. What his wife was doing upstairs didn't hit that basic trigger he thought he had. He had won over it. He gave his friend a big smile and a nod. Consuela, feeling sure now, looked around the living room, saw the laptop on the couch, and tiptoed across the room carpet. Ryan had shown her how to walk silently, like the old ways of the Comanche, used for hunting or sneaking up on foes. After trying it out here and there for 2 weeks, you couldn't hear her steps on a noisy wood floor. Ryan smiled big. Consuela took the laptop to the kitchen and sat down. In a bit, she was on the bank's site and typing in Michael's password. They were a bit shocked it worked. The bank rules said you had to change your password every 2 months. But Shawn Michaels didn't care for that. He never did. With a smile to Ryan, Consuela put down a printout of account numbers from Great-Uncle Roberto next to the laptop. These papers and the clothes they had on were to be burned tonight. They had the info safe on the laptop with Cousin Richard and a backup with Great-Uncle Roberto. They also hid more printouts in Ryan's truck for more sneaky bank jobs they planned that week. Consuela got busy finding accounts of really rich folks who trusted Shawn Michaels and Carrie Gilchrist with their money. Soon her fingers flew, typing away fast. Back in the car, they burst out laughing. They cracked up over what each other said, even if the jokes weren't that funny. Consuela kept touching Ryan's hand and arm. They had to. They just did a big bad thing together. They needed to feel close to stay calm. Soon the rush faded and they fell silent. Her hand stayed in his for comfort as what they did hit them hard. When it was time to switch cars, holding hands just felt nice. They left the BBQ spot fast, making sure to drive slow and careful along a path they picked out a week ago. It was hard, but they found a way through the city that missed all the cameras on the streets or places they guessed might have them but couldn't see. With their plain car, wigs, hats, dark glasses, and simple clothes, they thought no one would notice them, even if people looked at videos from every house and shop they passed. They kept their hats low and covered their faces just in case, worrying someone might spot them anyway. Back where they left their cars, they took off their clothes, down to their underthings, and put all they used that day in a big trash bag. The bag went into the back of Ryan's truck. They felt a bit shy in just their underwear in front of each other, since it was the first time. But neither showed it. Each thought the other was cool and focused, not at all worried about how they looked. They dressed fast and split up. Consuela went to get Belinda from daycare, and Ryan hurried to the cabin he was staying at in the hills near Marble Falls. Tonight he planned to burn all in the bag, then look for any bits of metal like buttons in the ash. Come dawn, he'd hop into his 16-foot boat, kept ready by the lake, and toss the ash and bits into its deep spots. Who knows, he might even fish up a base for his breakfast. But the big thing was, no sign of what he and Consuela had been up to would be left. By the time Friday rolled around, it was just the norm for Ryan and Carrie. It was almost dull. They had to keep reminding each other to stay sharp with their safety steps. They'd park their car in new spots daily, near the BBQ spot, because that was the best way to sneak into the bush without eyes on them. Their costumes and how they switched up the way they walked made sure nobody would catch on to them being the same pair all week. Shawn Michaels and Carrie Gilchrist managed to sneak away to the Gilchrist house every single day of the week. They met up at different times, but it was always at the same house. Ryan found it sad that Shawn never thought to rent a motel room for a change of scene. The guy was stingy. That was really all there was to say about him. Consuela thought saying anything more about the guy would be just as sad. By Friday, changing into their costumes took Ryan and Consuela way less time than on Monday. They parked not far from the BBQ spot and walked towards it, arm in arm, not stopping. Ryan pulled the earpiece from his ear and put it in his pocket. The two sheriff's cars in the lot were likely there since the officers were inside enjoying a big plate of ribs. There were no cops buzzing around the area, no signs of a big case going on at the restaurant or in the nearby woods. People walked by without giving it a second look. No one cared or followed. But none of this really mattered. "Shall we leave?" Ryan whispered a block away. Consuela didn't know the phrase, but she got what he meant. She nodded tiny, her big bush hat hiding her face. At the corner, she glanced back, pretending to check for cars. "No one's coming," she said softly. "All clear." "It's smart to be cautious," Ryan said. "It's a sign," Consuela stated with surety. Ryan didn't doubt her. They walked calmly around the block to the car they were using today, got in, and drove off. They stuffed their last bag with the clothes they took off, adding the ones they didn't use, and put it in Ryan's truck. He hid an envelope with $300 under the car seat, no mat there, and quickly drove away, sharing a fast kiss they both really needed. They rushed more now than before. They tried to convince themselves nothing was different from yesterday, but the sight of those cop cars spooked them. They were glad to be done with this part. The next day, after pretending to come back from a hunting trip that didn't happen, Ryan took out a bug from near the door. He smashed it on the garage floor and picked up every piece. He put them in a trash bag to throw away in different bins around town that night. That same Saturday night, an hour after a call from Consuela, Great Uncle Roberto started to spread the news. On the next Monday, in many banks across the Caribbean, people who looked so plain they blended in began to drain accounts using secret codes the banks thought only the real owners could know. They got cashier's checks, sometimes cash, and went on to other banks to drop the money as told. Soon after, other accounts got fat with these cashier's checks, then emptied as fast as the bank computers could work. By the next day, no account had any money left. From then on, every move of money was done in cash. Bit by bit, a lot of small cash amounts, mostly in US dollars, started to sneak into Roberto's special accounts in secret banks. 3 weeks went by and no one made a fuss. Ryan was sure news would break fast as soon as trouble started. It had to be the biggest thing to shake up the area in bank history. He knew this because when Consuela added it all up, they learned they had moved nearly $9 million out of the country into hidden accounts. That money was long gone from where it was sent first, and those looking into it would soon hit a dead end. Tracking the cash after the first or second move was going to be really hard. The men and women who had moved the money from one place to another had done their part and disappeared. They had blended back into the crowd in many Caribbean towns, putting their fancy outfits away for the next time they'd be needed. Even if they were found and pushed to talk, they couldn't say who told them what to do. The orders had come from other people just as hard to spot, who also vanished into the crowd. By the time the money was moved a third and fourth time, no one could track where it went. There were too many steps to follow. The cash just vanished into the huge pile of money that floats around the banks in the Caribbean. The banks in Cayman Islands alone have more than $800 billion, and there's just as much in the other offshore banks. Dropping $9 million in didn't even stir the waters. With each move, small bits were taken off. It didn't really matter. Even after everyone got their share and great-uncle Roberto took his cut, over $7 million were left. That was enough for Ryan and Consuela. The bank was hit hard. They knew it was a big loss. The money started to show up in Mexico City, hidden in regular account activities that Roberto handled. The total was huge, especially since Consuela had to keep each transfer under $10,000. They didn't want to send up red flags by needing to fill out those big forms for moving more than $10,000 at once. Consuela even set up a ton of automatic transfers that worked by themselves after she logged off. After the first day, this method handled most of the job. It was all very easy. It's amazing what one username and a 12-character password could do. Surely when someone figured it out, there'd be trouble in the business area. It was just a waiting game. Ryan and Consuela went on with their daily lives, just waiting. "Hi," said a thin voice. The cheap phones didn't have good parts. "How are you?" Ryan answered. He knew it was Consuela, even with her voice sounding weird because of the poor phone quality. They liked to chat each night. A light link, but dear to them. "Good, really good. You?" she said back. "I'm okay. Just can't wait, but fine," Ryan shared. That's all he'd say. They kept quiet about the big Texas bank heist they were linked to. This time he drove on the town's southeast, far from work and home. Yesterday the call was near his place. They were smart, making sure their calls didn't look odd, avoiding the same spots too often. "Me too," she said, then quiet with some noise behind her. "Hey, Mr. Ryan." Ryan smiled a bit. "Hey, Belinda. How's it?" he asked softly. "Okay," the little one said. "When will you come see me?" She missed him. It had been long since Ryan found a reason to visit her mom's place. "Think I'll be there Sunday," he told her. He had work in that small town on Monday, checking shops for a big job. He told his wife he'd leave early to check them. Carrie was okay with that. She liked the space. He and the 4-year-old talked more. He liked it. She felt big because he didn't talk down to her. They both were excited for his secret Sunday visit. "You still there?" Consuela took the phone back from her daughter. Ryan laughed. He knew what was said when Consuela got her phone back. Belinda was mad she lost the phone. "Yep," he said. "I think she needs a trip to Baskin-Robbins for an ice cream cone or something like that on Sunday." Belinda loved that. "Baskin-Robbins?" Consuela said a bit loud. That was so Belinda could hear. "I'm not sure. Has she been good enough for that?" The noise behind her stopped fast. Ryan laughed again. They both went quiet for a bit. "I watched a cool TV show last night," Consuela said like it was nothing big. "Oh?" Ryan said. "Yeah, on Channel 16, she said, at 10 in the night. It's on every work night at the same time." "What's it called?" Ryan wanted to know. They talked about a lot, but Consuela was being vague. He felt something was up. "It's named Busted, and I think they film it in Dallas. Or maybe Houston," she said, sounding unsure. "Oh? What's it about?" he pushed. "I think you should watch it and see what you think," Consuela said, dodging the question. She clearly didn't want to talk about it over the phone. Ryan stopped asking and said he'd check out the show. They talked a bit more and hung up when Ryan hit bad traffic. They'd meet in 2 days. It had to wait until then. He watched the TV show in his study. With the door shut, no sound went upstairs, and he had a new comfy chair there. Carrie might not have even seen it. She rarely came to any place he was likely to be. Carrie had gone to bed early again with one of her many headaches. He could see she was a bit uneasy about Ryan not wanting CC, but she wasn't worried enough to act on it. For now, being safe with Ryan was enough for her. Shawn Michaels gave her the love and care she needed in other ways. She felt she had everything she wanted. The TV show started with a story about a detective agency in Houston. Ryan didn't know the agency, but that was okay. The episode they watched was filmed in Austin, about a young lady who thought her boyfriend, the father of their new baby, was acting strange and not caring. She suspected he was seeing someone else and asked the TV show Busted to find out. She was right. Her boyfriend had another girlfriend and was cheating. The host showed her clips of her boyfriend being close and going into a motel with another woman. After she cried and felt upset, the host took her and the TV crew to a place where the boyfriend and his new girl were eating outside. When the boyfriend saw the cameras, he looked shocked. He couldn't say much and just took a lot of angry words from his girlfriend and the other woman. The host said they'd tell viewers what happened next, later. The next story was about a man in Houston who thought his wife might be cheating with someone from her gym. This story was pretty much the same as the first, just with the roles switched and small details changed. The end credits showed that the PI firm on TV would help anyone for free if they used their case in the show. After thinking hard for an extra 10 minutes, Ryan was sure of his next step. He reached for the phone and called the number on the screen. In the morning, he'd find a lawyer to say he thought his wife was not being true, and that he had asked TV detectives to check. He pretty much knew what they'd find. The long wait was almost over. The night was dark, and storm clouds were gathering far to the northwest. A big storm was brewing over the hills, ready to hit the city below. It was still warm, as the fall had been gentle, with nice days and cool nights. People wore light jackets or just shirts, with rain gear nearby. The show's host signaled to the woman holding the camera. She stood firm, feet apart, careful not to lock her knees. She knew that keeping knees locked could make people pass out and fall over, something she had seen happen before. She was surprised that even soldiers are told not to lock their knees for the same reason. Once ready, the host pulled Ryan closer so they'd both fit in the shot. He started to speak. He was sad they had to call Ryan back early from his trip. They had news about his wife. He was sorry, but he had to tell Ryan that his wife was indeed breaking her marriage vows. Ryan looked really down. He thought he did a good job, but just to make sure it was all right, he turned and walked away from the host and camera for a bit. Only his wide back could be seen for a while. Not wanting to push it, Ryan cleared his throat and moved back to the host. He slowly nodded yes when the host asked if he was okay to watch the video he brought. The tiny cameras that the show's detectives taught him to set up in his room were really good. The clips of his wife with another man were super clear, way better than the ones he filmed on his own. As he watched the tiny digital camera screen, Ryan pulled on the beard he had grown not too long ago. He put on the beard and a nice mustache to look different. He wore them and a Texas Rangers baseball hat, so the spy gear shop guy in Dallas wouldn't know him. It was one of many things he and Consuela did lately to keep their secret safe. The beard and mustache also helped hide who he was from folks in the small town not too far from San Antonio. He and Consuela hadn't been seen together there or anywhere else for a few months, but it was still good to be extra careful. The host knew Ryan was okay with watching the video. The producer who had called Ryan in Memphis 2 days before was sorry, but they wanted Ryan to come on Friday evening when they could bring a whole camera team to San Antonio. Ryan told the producer on the phone he would be there and said yes to being filmed as he watched the shocking tape. The meeting he had in Memphis wasn't big for Ryan. In fact, he only left town so Carrie would feel she could do whatever she liked. He said yes to coming back home fast. When the show guy was about to ask the big question, he told Ryan he'd pitch, the one about getting reasons from his lost wife. Ryan had a quick, bright idea. He made wild signs at the camera and the show guy running it. "Hold on, I got a plan," he said. The annoyed look on the show guy and the boss turned into smiles as Ryan shared his thought. They knew he saw Shawn Michaels in those clips. He said so on air. They didn't guess Ryan knew Michaels' wife well enough to call her up. Their smiles grew at his idea to dial her up for the big talk, as they named it. A phone was passed to Ryan, already open. "Mrs. Michaels?" Ryan started. "Yes?" came a wary woman's reply. "Sharon, it's Ryan Gilchrist," he said, trying to sound calm. "Oh, hi, Ryan," she answered. No weight in recognizing his name, even though it had been a while since they last spoke. Yet she didn't seem thrilled. Ryan went straight to the heart of it. No sweet talk. "Sharon, I'm really sorry to drop this on you, but your man and my woman have been sneaking around," he stated clear. A sharp breath in was heard, but Sharon was quiet at first. "Sharon?" Ryan broke the silence. Yes, I'm still here," she came back with a heavy voice. "How long have you known?" she finally asked. "I've guessed for a while, but tonight I saw it clear," Ryan told her. He was ready for such a question with a vague yet suitable reply. "I get it," Sharon Michaels said, uneasy. "Well, it's not a total shock," she breathed out heavily. "Curse him," she added softly. "Sharon, there's more." Ryan found the next part tough to bring up. "I'll just say it," he decided. "Sharon, I'm here with a TV crew from a show in Houston and, so we're going to surprise them on their date at that restaurant by the river." There was a long quiet on the other side. "Oh, wow," Sharon finally said, then burst into giggles. "You're going to mess with my dumb husband, huh?" She laughed harder. "He deserves it, the fool." "Yeah, Sharon, I gotta be honest. I'm going to wreck him and my wife tonight," Ryan said. "I can't see him keeping his job, and I'm sorry for how that hits you." There was a pause. "Don't sweat it," Sharon answered. "He's got a sweet deal if they let him go. He'll get a fat check. I'll make sure I get mine and then some," she added. "Ha!" Ryan laughed loud, feeling upbeat. "I get it, but hey, Sharon, one last thing. Do you want to join us and really shake them up?" Double trouble. Sharon was silent a bit longer. "I hadn't thought about that. I don't want to be all over. You know what? That's exactly what I need. Yeah, I'm in. Where you at?" "I'll pass you to the producer to give you the details," Ryan said. She agreed, and Ryan handed the phone to the producer, who quickly sorted everything. When she arrived, they would have her sign off on using her voice and face on TV. Then, she'd get a little mic like Ryan's, pinned to her. The battery pack clipped to his belt was a bit bulky. He made a note to avoid leaning back on anything hard. There were 4 big cameras, and it looked like it took 3 people to run each one. Besides the person holding the heavy video camera, there had to be someone to help move them around. Pulling on their clothes or holding them by the waist, they made sure the camera folks could keep their eyes on what they were filming. The third person held a big boom mic, lifting it up to catch all the words from those in front of the camera. A group of men and 2 women, who the show boss called licensed private eyes, were there with the cameras and host. They were almost as many as the folks being filmed. The host kept calling them security and detectives. Before everything started, the show boss talked to the club manager. She had seen the show before and liked the buzz it would bring. She was all for it. Excited folks meant more drinks sold, and that was good for business. She let the club's bouncers know what was up and told them to stay out of the way. She also made it easy for the camera teams to get inside by a side door, turning off the alarm that would usually sound. This let them zip to a table near the dance area fast. The host and Ryan made a beeline inside the club. The camera teams and their guides were hot on Ryan's heels, eager to catch the action they knew was coming. As the club's folks saw them, a loud cheer went up. But the couple at a side table didn't see them coming. Carrie's back was turned, and Shawn Michaels was busy talking to a waitress in a short dress, signing what seemed like a bill. Carrie jolted in her seat and looked around fast. She was hit by a bright light and couldn't see a thing. "Hey, Carrie, what's going on?" Ryan called out. He tried not to sound mean. It was hard. He had been waiting for this day. Carrie's mouth fell open. Her eyes got big. She was more shocked now than when Ryan had found her with Marshall years ago. "Carrie, I'm Johnny Waterfield from the TV show Busted," the host said. She looked at him, not really getting what he said. She didn't seem to know he was there. "What?" she said softly. But the mic caught it. "Can you tell Ryan why you're here with this man?" We're just pals," she said in a tight voice. "No, that's not true," Johnny said back. "We have a video of you and Mr. Michaels being together at your place," he said. "What do you have to say?" She shook her head. Her eyes got wild. She felt trapped. With people and cameras all around, She could only stare into the camera. She couldn't look away. "We're just pals," she said again. "We're just out for drinks and—" "Is that so?" Ryan yelled. "Just pals? How about we talk to another friend?" he said, and pointed past her shoulder. "Meet Sharon," he said in a rough voice. Ryan thought he'd have to pretend, but he didn't need to. He was truly mad about his wife's cheating. He had put up with it for so long. It felt good to let it out. Sharon Michaels had sneaked behind the table and took a big jug of beer from another table. When the camera moved to center her in view, she poured the beer on her husband. A lot of the cold drink made Carrie's light white shirt almost see-through. This part would be blurred in the final show, but at that moment, Ryan and everyone else could see she wasn't wearing a bra. He looked at her very short skirt and the tall, sharp heels she had on and shook his head. Another camera team was on the other side of the table and caught his not happy look just right. "You got panties on?" Ryan said with a sneer. He didn't wait for her to answer and lifted her skirt to show she indeed did not wear any. The crowd, at least those close enough to see, cheered loud. It was a shot that would need blurring, but people watching the final show would guess what was not there. Carrie moved fast to pull her skirt back down. She tried to hide, pulling her legs under the table. Across from her, Shawn Michaels was still trying to get beer out of his eyes. He hadn't said a thing yet. His eyes were big in a pale face. He was looking back and forth from the camera to his angry wife. Even though he was silent, Sharon was yelling at him. "What do you have to say?" she yelled. "Come on, talk, you jerk! What are you doing here with her?" The crowd was really into it and got louder. The show's maker was very happy. This needed a lot of cuts, but it would be the top show he had done in a while. Sharon grabbed her husband's earlobe hard and pulled him from his chair. She started to head for the door and everyone else began to follow. Carrie got up, trying to move, but found it hard in her tall shoes. The crowd didn't make it easy on her, and some men took the chance to touch her as she passed. She didn't even notice. Once outside, the TV crew followed her every step as she ran down the sidewalk. She then realized she was going the wrong way and had to turn back towards where her car was parked. Passing the club again made those hanging around outside even more thrilled. Now the rain made her clothes stick and her makeup run. Her hair was flat against her head. She ran into an alley and found a spot to catch her breath. "I can't believe," she said, out of breath. The show host and camera crew were still with her. "What can't you believe, Carrie?" asked Johnny, the host. "Do you want to talk about why you've been seeing another guy behind your husband's back? He'd probably want to know." "I can't believe he'd make me look bad like this," Carrie cried out. Johnny was shocked for a moment and lost for words. "Don't you think you're the one who made things bad, Carrie?" he finally said. Carrie didn't reply. She might not have heard him. She tried to move past the host and kept going down the alley. When she got to her car, her hands shook so much she couldn't get her keys out of her purse or open the door. Johnny took the keys from her and opened the door for her. She tried many times to pull them from his grip until he at last let go. She didn't answer his asks, just kept nodding no. Ryan hit the window, his knock loud on the glass. "Hey, love," he said, joking. "Why the rush? The fun's not done. Look what I've got for you." His lawyer had been on call since Ryan rang the TV crew the day after, but the papers waited in Ryan's file, set for the right time to show up. When the call from the producer came 2 days back, Ryan got his lawyer to move. The divorce papers Ryan had signed were now with the court. Ryan had to set up a special meet, and that was going down now. Ryan stepped aside for the older guy in a cowboy suit and a fancy light hat to get near the door. The small, thin man showed Carrie a badge and ID that made him look like he was more than a private eye Ryan had paid, but the badge seemed real. She looked lost for a sec. Then at his sign, she rolled down the window. "Carrie Denise Gilchrist?" he asked, like it was official. She said yes with her head. He pulled a pack of papers from his coat and put them in her hand. "You are served," he said, quick, and moved back. He sniffed, sure he'd end up sick from being out here. He opened an umbrella, walked to where his car was. The camera caught him, but it didn't show up when they told the story later. Carrie still held the papers. She looked shocked, beyond caring. "Carrie!" Ryan yelled. She looked at him. "Don't think about going home," he said with a snarl. 20 minutes after you left tonight to meet your friend, I changed the locks on all the doors. I got some movers to pack up your stuff from the closet. It'll be at your parents' house soon. I don't care where you go, Carrie. I loved you. But now that love is gone. You killed it and it's never coming back. Don't call, don't write, don't try to reach me in any way. Got it? He said, sharp. I don't want to see you, hear from you, or about you. You're nothing to me and I should have kicked you out when you first cheated. Just seeing you makes me sick. He looked like he might throw up. He couldn't find more words. He turned and walked off, leaving his soon-to-be ex-wife sitting there shocked. The camera crew ran to follow him. Turns out the cameras lost them for a while. Later, it was found out she had gotten a cab before going into the club and took him home. Neighbors heard Sharon yelling at him until early morning. A week later, the show's people came to see if they were still together. She forced Sean to sign a paper so the show could use his picture. The show folks thought maybe he didn't really know what he was signing. He had no choice but to do what his wife wanted. When Sharon handed him a pen, he just signed where she pointed. Ryan went home and shaved off his mustache and beard. He didn't need them anymore. The next morning, another lawyer Ryan had hired went to the bank. He sat in a big fancy office where the top people worked, when John Harrison. The bank boss walked in and saw Carlton J. London sitting there with 3 of his legal helpers. Harrison knew him well. They both liked art and helped out at charities in San Antonio. London was also one of the best lawyers around. He looked sharp and was known to be very strong, both in court and when riding horses at his ranch near Abilene. When Harrison heard London was there for Mr. Ryan Gilchrist, the husband of Mrs. Carey who worked under Shawn Michaels, he got worried. Mr. Gilchrist was suing the bank because they didn't stick to their own rules about behaving properly. Mr. Gilchrist said the bank let his wife have an affair with a lesser boss and tried to hide it, even though both of them had contracts saying they had to act morally. He thought the bank made it easier for his marriage to fall apart. After some talk, Mr. London wanted to see Mr. Shawn Michaels' work records. He found the head of the staff department and showed him a bunch of legal demands signed by a judge that morning. The president got all the big bosses together to figure out how bad their situation was. The HR boss had to leave the meeting for a bit. When he came back, he was very shaken. While they were all talking, a newer worker in his team had seen the legal paper on the boss's desk. Not knowing the lawyers hadn't seen it yet, this worker had gone ahead and gotten the records and some of Mr. Michaels' personal stuff ready. London's helpers had used the fast copier in the junior's own office to copy every paper in the file. One of London's helpers had left the building right away with the copies, while London looked at the originals in a small meeting room. Was there a way for the HR boss to get some security guards to take the file from London by force? Even though he had a legal paper, was that all? What about the copies already gone from the building? No one wanted to look at the HR manager or the bank boss. Suddenly, the phone rang. The youngest of the bosses answered. After listening, he told the president that London had been shouting bad words while looking at Mr. Michaels' work record and didn't stop for a long time. Now, London wanted the records of all bad behavior reports in the bank for the last 2 years. He was talking about getting another legal paper to make it happen. The young boss asked if this was a big deal. 3 bosses felt sick all at once. Ryan and Consuela had talked about the TV show as a way to avoid meeting Carrie in court with Ryan's own videos. They thought the show would not only help Ryan, but also likely cause a check on Michael's running of the wealth part of the bank. And it did. A week after Ryan's lawyer had sued the bank, Consuela got a call late at night from a happy friend still at the bank. Right before lunch, the building was almost shut down. The big shots had a rushed meet upstairs right after they came. Since noon, a bunch of folks in sharp suits and big bags had gone straight to the top floor. At closing time, another group in not-so-fancy suits showed up. They looked tough, and a bank worker saw 2 flash FBI badges to get past security. Others with different badges followed. No one looked pleased. There was talk that the big boss of the money teams nearly got wild, trying to open a window up on the 22nd floor. Maybe just talk, but wow. Could Consuela believe this, her friend wondered? Consuela thanked her and said she had to get Belinda to sleep. Right after, she called Ryan on a burner phone with the scoop. They thought about ditching the phones but waited for any sign that they were being watched. Hearing each other's voice was getting more key for them. They agreed to use the phones less. It was the wise move. Mr. Gilchrist? Yes? Ryan was half there, eyeing a big list of stuff and not the two guys who stepped into his office. Special Agent Thomas, Special Agent Williams from the FBI. Can we talk? The taller one asked. Since you're here, go ahead, Ryan said, finally looking up with a bothered look. He was not happy with the two agents, but not for the reason they thought. He wasn't mad they were here. He was mad they didn't come sooner. Waiting was not his thing. He waved his hand. The agents pushed their badges closer so he could see. Nah, I don't need to see your badges, Ryan said with a harsh voice. I can find ones just like those in the kids section at Walmart. Show me your real ID cards. The agents looked at each other, a bit shocked. Not many people ask for the hard-to-fake IDs, but they had to show them when asked. And so, they did. Ryan looked at them for a bit, then picked up the office phone. He found the number for the local FBI office fast, called them, and had a quick chat with the head of the San Antonio office. He confirmed they had two agents matching the descriptions and IDs Ryan gave. Ryan made a small sound, said thanks, and hung up. Okay, he said, you're the real deal. What do you need from me? His face and voice were now more welcoming. Have you ever doubted someone was a real federal officer before, Mr. Gilchrist? The older agent asked. Ryan nodded. Yeah, about 2 years and 3 months back, some guy came here wanting to chat with all my workers about some anti-bad business stuff. He showed a badge and had my crew all confused about who Rico was. Ryan smiled at the memory. Turns out he was from a union up north, thought he could scare me into letting the place go union by acting tough. Last I heard, he's locked up in a federal jail. I even spoke at his trial. The agents looked at each other again, something that was starting to annoy Ryan. He wondered if they even knew they were doing it. Both were sure they saw a note in Gilchrist's file that said he had helped in a big sting a few years back. The head agent then had lots of good things to say about Gilchrist. So who's in trouble for bad stuff now? Ryan asked, wanting to know more. No, said Special Agent Thomas. We're on a team set up by the Justice and Treasury Departments. We're looking into bad money moves at the bank where your wife used to work. Ha! Ryan let out a loud laugh. Did you guys check everything out? Don't just look at each other, answer me, he snapped. Taken aback, the two agents glanced at each other again before turning back to Ryan. They both went a bit red. Ryan just shook his head and let out a big sigh. If you dug into me, he said with a hint of defeat, you know I won't have a wife once the judge is done with what my soon-to-be ex's lawyer wants, he added. We know that, Mr. Gilchrist. We found out other stuff, too. We know the divorce is waiting on what comes of the crime, look-see, and maybe a court case. But we think you might know something that could help. Got anything to say? Agent Thomas tried to look tough, hoping for a slip-up. Ryan just looked puzzled. Folks, I know the word bank, and on a good day, I can put down money and laundry without much trouble. But that's it. How on earth can I help with what's going on there? Heck, I don't hear a peep from there since me and the wife split, he said, strong. Ryan let out a sigh when he saw the agents exchange looks. This was his first run-in with the cops about bank fraud, and he was far from impressed. The FBI folks took a cup of hot, almost too strong coffee from the urn in the corner and kept on asking Ryan questions for another 15 minutes. They tried every way they could think of, but they couldn't get any useful info from him. What do you think? Agent Thomas asked his buddy as they drove off. I got nothing, Williams replied. Same here, Thomas said. The guy seems a bit simple, right? I don't think he's smart enough to be in on this. Not at all, Williams quickly said. Stan Williams had been with the FBI for 22 years and had seen many types come and go more than his younger buddy. Gilchrist is smart. Watch his eyes if we see him again and you'll get it. He's sharp, but he likes it when people don't take him seriously. It works for him, Williams said. But I still don't think he's got a hand in this, Agent Williams noted. The guy's only got a BBA and a few night classes in basic banking from years ago. I can't see him being part of something like this. Right, Thomas agreed. Plus, he doesn't have a passport, no ties to friends in the Caymans or any place like that, no strange cash, no big debts, and nothing stressing his work or personal finances. If he's in this, he's real good. That night, Ryan told Consuela about the visit using his pay-as-you-go phone. She was all jumpy, wondering what the agents knew, but Ryan brushed off her worries. They were just looking around, he said. If they had any clue, they would have asked him clear things about his job, where he was when the money went missing, and who he spoke to on those key days, stuff like that. He told Consuela he waited for even a small sign they thought he was linked to her, but nothing came up. He was sure. They asked no questions that could lead to her. He made sure of it. He explained to Consuela that the visit meant nothing. They were just checking boxes so no one could say they jumped to conclusions too fast. Ryan and Consuela should only worry if they came back with papers to search his office or something. But really, there wasn't anything to worry about, he said. Even if they did come back with papers to search, Ryan said, they'd find nothing. What was there to find? The only proof that could get them in trouble was the laptop 100 miles away, hidden by Cousin Richard. Everything else was destroyed, burned away, and the bits that were left got thrown into lakes far and wide. Even if they figured out something about Consuela, anyone who saw them would just think it was a love thing, especially with Ryan's marriage going bad. Some folks at the cafe might say Ryan had breakfast with her a few times, but that's all they knew. None of her family would say a thing, and most didn't know much anyway. The cars were set up by her aunt, and no one else had a clue. Her aunt would never help the cops. She was still mad about how they treated her son in a DUI case 7 years back. All things considered, he didn't think anyone would ever come asking Consuela questions. He promised her he'd keep any suspicion far away from her. The bank's top folks asked Ryan and his lawyer to talk about settling his case early. Ryan was cool as a cucumber when he walked into the bank's meeting room. Mr. Gilchrist, we think your claim of being hurt on purpose doesn't really hold up in court, but we admit there were some small mistakes with how we handled our staff and I. Mr. Gilchrist? Something up? Ryan got up, fixing his suit coat and buttoning it. He looked at the bank's lawyer, a man named Darren Estrada. So you're saying my suit doesn't stand, right? That's what you said? Well, if that's so, I thought we were done here. I was about to head out and wait for the judge to pick a date, Ryan told Mr. Estrada. Maybe you want a bit to talk it over with your lawyer? Estrada asked, a bit shaky. Ryan glanced at his lawyer. Mr. London was also on his feet just a moment after Ryan. He was surprised but kept cool, seeing Ryan take charge. No need, Ryan said. I've known Mr. London for a bit now. He's helped me a lot since last year. A real good guy. Gave me solid advice, Ryan said, happy. Ah, I see, Estrada said. Well then, let's get to the point, shall we? Would you like to sit, Mr. Gilchrist? Ryan just shrugged. If you're done wasting our time, yeah. All right, Estrada said, trying to sound cheerful. I believe we can finish up soon, he added. Great, Ryan said. I've got to testify at a sexual harassment trial up in Dallas this afternoon. If we can hurry this along, I'd be real thankful. I've gotten quite interested in that trial, if you catch my drift. The thick southern drawl made Estrada's neck turn a bit red. His lips got tight, and a quick twitch showed on the left side of his neck. He knew what case Gilchrist was talking about. A guy sitting in a chair at the corner shifted a bit. He didn't speak, but Estrada noticed the small move. Yeah, I'm sure we can wrap this up fast for you, Mr. Gilchrist, he said, moving papers around in his briefcase. Mr. Gilchrist, let's just cut to the chase, okay? My folks want to give you... Ryan cut him off with a quick hand motion. His face showed he was getting upset. Enough. Listen, this bank is caught in the middle, Ryan spat out, between the big law guy of this area and Texas's big law boss over bad stuff some top folks here did, talking or acting wrong to others. It's gotten way out of hand in the last 3 years, and now it's all blowing up. Plus, you've got government folks digging through your office looking for a crazy amount of money one of those top guys sent off to secret banks far away. You didn't keep your money-making parts and personal cash parts apart like other banks do, so now you've got too many checkers breathing down your neck. And then I come in wanting a piece because I can directly link very clearly, sir, my marriage breaking down to your top people not keeping an eye on her and one of your big bosses. Ryan leaned back and gave Mr. Estrada a cool look. I can read, Mr. Estrada, Ryan said, and just about all I mentioned is in the news. The bit that isn't is out there for anyone to see in the legal papers about the bad behavior case or in my own case. Why do you look so shocked I know all this? Did I miss anything, Mr. Estrada? I think you laid it out clear, Mr. Gilchrist. The guy in the corner let out a groan and sat up. His face was in the dark, but now he stepped into the light. He walked over to the table. "I'm Parker Winston," he said, just like that. He didn't reach out to shake hands. "I come from Chicago," he added. He left it at that, but Ryan caught the hint about the company's big office being there. Ryan eyed the man from Chicago, curious. "Estrada," Winston spoke firmly. "You just told our pals, Mr. Gilchrist and Mr. London here, we're in more trouble than we can fix." Estrada looked shocked. "Leave," Winston snapped. Estrada and his buddy, who was never introduced, took a moment, then quickly grabbed their stuff and left. Winston fixed his gaze on Ryan. He was a man who was used to being in charge. He figured Ryan would look away soon, but Ryan didn't. Finally, Winston started to talk, his voice steady. "In 10 minutes, you can walk out of here with a lot of cash," Winston suggested to Ryan. "Drop your lawyer. Let's keep it simple, just us. And it'll be done faster than you think," he said. Ryan stared back at him for a long beat. "Mr. London?" Ryan said without turning. "Could you give us a second?" London got up, left his case, planning to return, and walked out. The door closed firmly. Winston took a seat at the head of the table, all cool and sure of himself. "So what'll it take, Mr. Gilchrist?" he threw out suddenly. "I want this problem gone, and we're ready to pay to make that happen. Estrada thinks you're just a reckless guy, but you're smart enough to know this bank can't take more bad talk. You've got us in a tight spot, and we know it. How much do you want?" Ryan looked at the man for a long while. By the way Estrada acted, this man was super important at the bank's main office. He really wanted this problem to go away, badly. "I don't like being too greedy," Ryan said, "but I want this to sting enough so your big bank learns a lesson," he thought out loud. Winston's lips got even tighter. "I want $4 million, Ryan spoke softly. "All at once and tax-free, meaning you pay the tax so I get $4 million clear," he explained. "Unless somehow Congress decides to change the Small Business Job Protection Act of 1996 so emotional stress cases aren't taxed again," he added. "Did they change that today and I missed it?" Winston's eyes got sharp. The man hadn't tripped up saying the long name of the law or the short form for intentional emotional hurt. This simple contractor knew a lot, all things considered. Winston was sure this country guy had to leave the bank's matters alone now. "Deal," Winston said. Ryan shook his head and lifted his right hand. His little finger was tucked into his palm. "Don't agree so fast, Parker, my man. You might not like everything I want. That was just the first part. And that's on top of paying my lawyer's fees, just so you know. Any problems with that?" Mr. Winston waited a bit, looking Ryan in the eyes, trying to guess his thoughts. He shook his head. "All right. Second, the bank has to settle out of court with all 11 men and women who've complained about being treated badly in Dallas without making them go to court," Ryan said. "From your kind heart, you'll give them $500,000 all at once, and it won't be taxed like mine isn't. You'll also cover their lawyer costs," Ryan said, waving his ring finger in the air to show he wasn't done yet. "Plus, if they left or got fired, you'll ask them back and put them in their old jobs if they wish, with the step-ups in role they missed out on. They'll get pay for the time they were gone, dating back to when they left. Those who stayed should get all the pay they missed out on, from what they did get to what they should have gotten with the step-ups they were passed over for because of unfair treatment. You'll take back any bad job reports from that time or right after, if there were any. If the bank said bad things about any of the 11 who left, you'll take that back and say sorry to their new jobs for the mix-up," Ryan added, folding his ring finger. "Third, you will give Mrs. Sharon Michaels a sum equal to 10 years of her husband's pay, plus any other money he would have gotten if he hadn't been charged with fraud and money laundering. This, too, will be a one-off payment and tax-free, as we've talked about. Fourth, Mr. Winston, me and everyone else will get a sorry note from the bank's CEO for the hurt caused because your team couldn't manage things right. Fifth, in return, Mr. Winston, we won't go to court over what happened before, and we'll keep quiet about any deal or sorry words." Ryan's hand was a tight ball. He then let it rest easy on the table. Winston didn't say a word, eyeing Ryan for a bit. He wasn't happy with what was being laid out. "Come on, big city money guy," Ryan teased, a cold smile on his face. "You and I both know the money I get for the harm done won't be small," Ryan said. "I've got a sharp lawyer. Say no, and I could get 20 or 30 million, maybe even more. and no one's going to flip that decision later. I checked the outcomes of the last 50 similar cases. Just one didn't stick because it wasn't filled out right. Plus, you're paying for your lawyers too. You could drag this out, but it'll cost you a lot just to have your lawyers show up. You can skip all that trouble. Don't miss this shot, buddy. Winston sat quiet, mulling over his next move. Ryan was making fun of him, and he knew he had the bank cornered. Yet, he hesitated, hoping for a break. How much will the bad talk hurt each day when my trial and theirs hits the news, Mr. Winston? Ryan spoke in a low voice, leaning in. My lawyer, Ryan almost whispered, will talk to the press every single day right after court. Trust me. Parker Winston stared at Ryan with sharp eyes, but it didn't scare Ryan at all. Okay, Winston finally said. He didn't look happy, but he seemed to give in. Let's bring London back, Winston said. You tell him what he needs to know and he can make the papers. We need to get those who said they were treated bad to agree, but I think they'll say yes fast. Estrada will call them in Dallas right after we finish here. We should reach them before any go to court. I'll tell Estrada and the bosses to agree to your deal right away. All money will be sent in no more than 10 days after signing. The same goes for those treated bad. Deal? Ryan paused, looking deep into Winston's eyes. He nodded. I'm going to get $500,000? Consuela asked, amazed. Yes, Ryan said. Her face showed she couldn't believe it. And more for the wages I lost, right? She added. Ryan nodded. Cool, right? He said. Consuela nodded, still shocked. She looked around the small home she wouldn't have to stay in anymore. She was lost for words. What do we do now? She asked. Well, Ryan said, thinking. He pulled Belinda's arms from his neck for a second. She was holding on very tight, making it hard for him to breathe. It had been a long time since Ryan and Consuela felt safe to meet, and Belinda was scared he would go away again. How about we check out the cafe for dinner? Ryan suggested. Consuela's eyes got big. She knew it was a big deal to be seen out together. It wasn't risky now to be together. She grinned wide. Yeah! Belinda sang out. It almost took too long for Belinda's patience, moving her car seat from her mom's car to the big truck. But soon it was done, and they were off. The ride was full of joy. The cafe folks looked on in shock as the three walked in. This wasn't just a quick hello over breakfast, and anyway, Ryan and Consuela hadn't shared breakfast there for quite a while. But seeing how happy and close the three were, even the unsure ones started to smile back at them. Ryan was welcomed right in. A few couples and families came over to say hi to Consuela and meet Ryan properly. Everyone said they should come back more. They got back home just before the clock hit 12. Dinner, then ice cream at Baskin-Robbins, and finally, a movie for Belinda turned the night into a long, happy moment. No one was ready for it to end. Belinda, worn out, fell asleep on the ride back and only made a little noise when Ryan lifted her from the car seat to take her inside. Consuela made Belinda comfy in bed, pulling off her shoes and covering her up while Ryan looked on lovingly. Ryan stepped back to let Consuela come out of the room. She closed the door and looked at Ryan, who was still smiling, not saying a word. Letting go of the doorknob, she moved close to Ryan and wrapped her arms around his neck, bringing his head down for a deep kiss. The move was quick and smooth. Ryan didn't even try to step back, not that he would want to. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer to him. They stopped kissing, then started again. It wasn't their first kiss, but this one felt special to both of them. I've wanted that for a long time, Ryan said after a break for air. Consuela just smiled back. Me too, she said. She reached up to touch his face and ran her fingers along his jaw. Ryan took her hand gently and kissed each finger. This wasn't what we planned, she said, soft and low. Ryan looked at her, curious but quiet. We were going to help each other out in court, Consuela let out. I was going to say Sean hit on me, and you'd say he went after your wife to help us both win. Then she paused for another kiss, longer this time. And we planned to get back at them in the bank, she whispered next. Ryan led the kiss this time. We did it, Consuela said after stopping. We did just what we wanted and got off clear. And all the while you were like a shield, making sure they'd never catch on to me. Ryan shifted. He knew Consuela was tough. He didn't think she'd noticed his protective acts or care. Silly man, she said, catching his doubt. I saw what you did. And I knew it was for Belinda and me. Didn't you think I'd see that? She asked softly. Ryan was lost for words, so he stayed quiet. All this time, so strong, she marveled, so kind to me and my girl. Did you think I'd miss how Belinda was starting to love you? How can I not love her? Ryan said in a soft way. She's part of you, and I love you so much. Didn't you see? He whispered soft. Didn't you know what was going on with me? She nodded, her head on his chest for a bit, hearing his heartbeat. You know I love you that way too? She asked after a quiet, easy pause. She moved back to look into his eyes. Ryan shook his head slow. I was just hoping. He spoke softly. He leaned in to kiss her again, stronger this time. His tongue slid between her lips, meeting hers ready to play. Their bodies pushed close in a rush. Pulling back, Consuela looked at the man she loved, who loved her too. With a soft smile, she took his hand and led him to her room. Darling, she whispered, I can't handle too much of that. Consuela made a soft sound as he moved into her. She grabbed his arms and pulled him closer. She locked her feet behind him and pulled him deeper. Then Ryan moved away from Consuela and lay down next to her. It took some time before their heartbeats calmed and they could breathe easily again. So? Ryan asked in a relaxed way. Do you think you'd want me to stay? Do you think we are a good match? Consuela touched his arm and looked at him. They shared a breath. Without the strong passion, they kissed softly. Consuela made a sound of content. You won't be able to leave me. Ryan let out a soft laugh. They stayed silent for a bit. Oh, she softly said. In a while, when you can. Can I be on top? She laughed quietly. I'm ready, Ryan said in a low voice. Whenever you are. They didn't talk much after that. The court cases for Shawn Michaels and Carrie Gilchrist didn't take long. The U.S. lawyer didn't have a lot of proof, but what was there was strong and very bad for them. The first people to talk were banking pros, who explained how setting up accounts in other countries usually meant hiding money that should be taxed in the U.S. or sending bad money out of reach. A woman in serious clothes from the State Department said that none of the accounts where the money was sent had any money left. The governments in the Caribbean countries had agreed to say this much, but that was all. This was usual for those places, she mentioned. Special Agent Williams told the court that he and his partner had found a laptop from the bank with Michaels when they caught him. They took it and marked it as proof. Yes, the tag did show that, and it was his own mark on it. A tech whiz told the court that the laptop had lots of software on it. One was a special program the bank used to link up to its server from far away. He showed how it worked and shared some pictures of the first pages where you put in your name and secret word. A person from the phone company showed the call list for the phone owned by Ryan and Carrie Gilchrist. They pointed out times when the line was busy for about 21 to 23 minutes. The lawyer put those times and dates on a big white board in the room. No, he said, the Gilchrists didn't have a wireless network. Then, someone from the cable service told everyone the modem only hooked up to the big Dell computer in the home office. No other cable spots in the house were set up for modem use. Plus, their records said there was no use of the modem except for small checks the network did during the times listed on the whiteboard. Next, the bank's IT boss stated that Mr. Michael's username and code were used to get into some big accounts he looked after. Money moves, some set to keep going after the laptop user had left, happened during certain hours. Yes, those were the exact times on the whiteboard. The cash from those accounts went to IP addresses of banks far across the sea. The defense didn't agree, saying the IT boss couldn't be sure of that. That kind of thing wasn't what he knew best. The IT boss was miffed. He said he could find an IP address as well as anyone, and what he told the court was the plain truth. The judge let his word stand. Next up, a pro from the Treasury Department said the same stuff. He told the court he often makes lists of bank IP addresses to watch, and the ones in question truly matched the offshore banks they were talking about. The defense kept quiet. They had no questions for him. When it was the prosecution's turn to wrap up, the defense was backed into a corner. They tried to argue that no one saw Shawn Michaels type in the transfer data. It could have been Carrie Gilchrist or someone else, they said. The Gilchrist place had no security. Anyone could have been there. Who knows? But they had to admit Shawn and Carrie had an affair. It was out there. They both said so in video statements early on. No point hiding it. The TV show that aired their story was a hit. Clips were all over local TV. The network even told the prosecutor it was a top watch every time it aired. The defense tried to plant doubts. They wondered out loud if it made sense for two lovers sneaking around to stop for computer work. Mr. Michaels and Mrs. Gilchrist could have done their dodgy money moves from the office, the defense suggested. Why go to the Gilchrist house? The prosecution didn't bite on this. They didn't need to explain why the lovers chose the Gilchrist house for their scheme. The facts were there, clear as day. The case against him was too strong. Even though they couldn't show the money went to an account he or anyone else directly set up, it didn't matter, nor did it matter that they couldn't prove they spent any of the stolen money. Everyone thought they just hadn't had the chance yet. To fight back, the team against him brought in an FBI expert from Quantico, Virginia. This expert said that all the fingerprints in the house were from people who should be there. No signs showed that doors or windows were broken into, and no marks were around to suggest anyone waited to sneak in. In short, there was no trace of anyone else being there but the house folks, their friends, and Mr. Michaels. At the end, Michaels was found to be at fault for everything. He broke down and cried hard at the table. He was a mess when the officers from the Bexar County took him to jail to wait for his punishment. Carrie was smart from the start with the cops, and always said she didn't know Michael's login stuff for the bank. Even when Michael's lawyer tried to show Carrie knew and had used Michael's account info, she stuck to her story. This might have kept her out of deeper trouble related to Michael's bad actions. Carrie's only slip was when she got caught in a small lie by someone asking her questions a month after it all started. It was a dumb mistake to make. She lied about a small thing, and they added the charge about the lie at the last minute just to fill out the list. The jury thought Carrie was part of the fraud but couldn't find proof that she knew it was happening. They did prove she lied and found her guilty on that alone. The vote on her guilt was quick. At the hearing, the jury only asked the judge to let the man, Michaels, serve his sentences at the same time. The judge said yes and gave him 20 years, place yet to be picked. Carrie got 1 year. As Michaels walked sadly toward the door to the cells, he passed Ryan close enough to talk. Then a bailiff got distracted by a reporter and fell behind. For a moment, Michaels had just one guard on his other side. Ryan leaned in. "That's what you get for being with another man's wife," he said in a low voice. Only Michaels heard. Michaels took a couple more steps, then froze as the words hit him. He turned to look at Ryan, eyes wide and wild. The bailiff behind hurried to catch up, but was too late. Michaels made a move at Ryan. The bailiff with him pulled him back, but Michaels started screaming loud, mad words. He pulled the big bailiff across the floor. It took 4 cops to hold him down as he fought hard to get to Ryan. He was yelling loud and struggling against them as they took him away. "Hello there, Agent Williams. How can I help you today?" Ryan was a bit surprised to see the FBI guy at his door, but not too much. He looked around to see if there were more agents with him. It was just Williams in the hallway. "Please come in," Ryan said. "Is it okay if I lock the door?" With his secretary gone for the day, he had locked up and didn't like the idea of someone sneaking up on him. "Sure," said Williams, polite as always. "I just need to ask you about a few things, if that's okay." "Of course, what do you need?" Ryan asked, quick to reply. "Want some coffee?" The coffee pot in the next room was still half full. Williams paused. He remembered the coffee from before. It was almost too strong for him, but he decided to say yes. He could handle it. "Thank you, I will." Williams took the mug full of dark coffee and held it tightly. It looked just as strong as last time. He took a careful sip. It was very hot. He tried another sip. "The reason I'm here, Mr. Gilchrist, is about something you said to Mr. Michaels. His lawyer told us." "Oh?" Ryan said, looking surprised and thoughtful, waiting for Williams to go on. "Michaels claims you told him during his trial that you made all of this happen." Williams watched Ryan closely, waiting for his reply. For a bit, Ryan showed nothing. Williams thought, not for the first time, that Ryan would be good at a game of poker. Then, Ryan lifted his eyebrows. "Is that all?" he asked. "Yes, sir, that's the main bit," Williams replied. Ryan gave a scoff. "No way. First off, I never talked to him at his trial. I wasn't near the guy. But yes, when he walked by me at his sentencing, I did say something like, "That's what you get for sleeping with my wife," or something like that. That's all I said. He lost it then, and they had to take him away. That was the last time I saw him. Can you explain what you meant by that, Mr. Gilchrist? Explain? Ryan seemed puzzled. The part about how him getting sentenced was what he deserved for being with your wife. Well, I'm not sure what you're asking. Seems clear to me. I'm not happy with the guy, and I think it's great he's going to be in jail. What comes around goes around, right? Exactly. I found it funny that he got 20 years for things he did while he was sneaking around with my wife. Does that make it clearer? Ryan's eyes showed a bit of anger he was holding back. I see, Williams said, switching his coffee cup from one hand to the other for a sip. It was a small trick to give Ryan a moment to calm down. So if Mr. Ryan let out a huff, "You bet," he said with a scoff. "Of course I deny it," he added with more words. Williams looked at Ryan while he drank. Ryan seemed mad, but he didn't look like he was lying. Williams thought about asking Ryan to take a lie test, but he knew Ryan wouldn't agree because he was too angry, and it wouldn't prove much except that Ryan was mad. "All right." Williams stood up quickly. "Thanks for talking with me, Mr. Gilchrist. We'll call you if we need more, okay?" He looked for a spot to put his mug. Ryan, still looking a bit upset but trying to hide it, took Williams's mug and placed it on a small table near his desk. "Ah," he said, "I'm going to be off for a few weeks and won't be here." "Where will you go, Mr. Gilchrist?" Williams asked without thinking. Ryan's eyes got sharp. "Why do you want to know, Special Agent Williams?" he asked, his voice rising. "They said I should not leave town while they were still looking into things, but that was months ago. The court stuff is done, 2 people are in jail, and it's all finished, right? Are you looking into me, Agent Williams?" "No, sir," Williams said straight up. Are you telling me I have to stay where you can find me anytime?" "No, sir," Williams said. "You don't have to. You're right. There's no big search going on by our team now. The Treasury and state folks are still trying to track down the money in the Caribbean, but they're not finding anything. And that's all that's going on." Ryan looked hard at the FBI guy. He took a deep breath in, held it. Then his jaw got tight before it loosened. He let the breath out. "Okay, sorry. I'm taking a break because I've been getting mad too easily, even over small stuff. I need some time to chill, you know? It's been a tough year. If I was rude, I'm sorry, okay?" No, not at all," Williams was quick to tell Ryan. He got it, truly. The guy had a wife who cheated, got caught on a TV show, saw his wife with another man, the court stuff. Yeah, Williams could see why he might be stressed. "Actually, you can reach me," Ryan said, warming up a bit. "I won't be on my phone much, but I'll check it. You have the number, right? Not sure where I'll be. Maybe off to my cabin near Marble Falls. Or might just drive. Maybe to the Grand Canyon or somewhere. I just need to get away, you know?" "I get it," Agent Williams said, feeling for the guy. They chatted a bit more. Then Ryan showed the FBI guy out and locked the door. Williams was starting his car when he suddenly felt worried. "Shit," he said loudly. He looked up at the building, at the windows of Gilchrist's office. Did Gilchrist just trick him into talking about the missing money case? He wasn't sure, but Gilchrist had made him feel sorry for him and moved the talk away from risky topics. He started the car. He shook his head, still looking at the windows. Was Gilchrist that clever? A small doubt crept into his mind for no real reason. He just felt something was off. The case was cold, but Agent Williams decided to trust his gut feeling. He'd keep an eye out for anything odd. With that thought, he started his car and merged into the evening traffic. After the FBI man left, Ryan stood still by the door, hands shaking and heart racing. It took a bit before he could hear anything over his loud heartbeat. He had let anger rise to hide his fear. The anger was real, but it was aimed at himself for being scared, not at the agent or the situation. It seemed to do the trick, though. Once he felt calm, he went back to his desk to sign the last stack of papers. His helper would be expecting them first thing tomorrow. Signing these papers was his final task before his planned break, which he had mentioned to the agent. Having the agent drop by turned out to be a good thing for Ryan. It showed him what the FBI knew, which wasn't much. If Agent Williams had any real evidence, he would have brought a search warrant. But he didn't. That meant the police hadn't found enough to convince a judge. This was a relief. The only search warrant they got was for his house, which made sense because that's where the bad stuff happened. They gave him his house back months ago. Plus, Consuela hadn't heard from anyone about the case. It seemed like the cops didn't even know she was part of this. He thought they might start to chill out a bit. Not a lot. Just a bit. He was keen on seeing Consuela and Belinda more. "Shh, love," Consuela told her kid. "Mama needs to chat with Ryan now. Ryan will peek at your art soon." Belinda was not pleased. She wanted Ryan to see the drawing of her mommy and Ryan right away. It was very important to her. She went into the kitchen, climbed onto her chair, and added more color to the people in her picture. Soon she forgot her mom had asked her to wait. "So you think he had no clue?" Consuela asked Ryan. "Nope. He was just guessing," Ryan said, feeling easy. "If they really thought they had something, they'd show up at my office, home, truck, all my work sites, and even the spot at Marble Falls with search papers. He's got nothing, and I can't see how he'd get enough proof for a search anywhere. He even said the big investigation was done in San Antonio. Some things are still checked out far away," he said, but it seemed dead end. "He just wanted to know what I said to Michaels at the court," I told him, and that was it." "Okay, that's good," Consuela said softly, then perked up. She had been tense these past months. She often wished she hadn't jumped so quick into their plan. The plan worked, but the fear of a sudden knock kept her on edge. Today, that fear felt far away. She eased up and lifted her face for a kiss from her love. "But Mom," Belinda begged Consuela, "all my friends will be there." The little girl had just turned 5 2 months ago. She was close to crying when Ryan walked in. It was his 5th day here. He stopped pretending he was staying somewhere else. He was next door, helping an old lady. She almost fell while trying to climb her porch steps. Seeing her struggle, Ryan rushed over to help, leaving Consuela's front door behind. "Uh-oh," he said, seeing the sad faces. "What happened?" "It's her school," Consuela said, looking worried. "They have a dad and daughter day tomorrow and, well, you know, she doesn't get it." Ryan nodded. He understood. Now he felt down, just like them. He knew Consuela left Belinda's dad 4 years back, right after the baby was born. She came back here with her little one. The dad tried to connect at first, but there were no calls or letters or visits for over 3.5 years. Ryan looked out, pretending to listen to a dog barking. He had a plan, but hesitated to act on it. Belinda was so sad, and it felt so wrong. He didn't like it. Making up his mind, he went back out and around the house to where his car was parked. He opened the passenger door and got a small box from under the seat. He checked it, making sure everything inside was okay, then took it back inside. Consuela and Belinda were by the back door, wondering why he left without saying anything. Both were worried. "What?" Consuela began to ask. Ryan grinned in a way that was hard to read and took her hand to gently lead her to the living room. He sat on the couch and tapped the seat next to him. "Honey, what's up?" Consuela asked, curious about Ryan's unusual behavior. Ryan cleared his throat, wishing he had grabbed a soda before. But now it was too late. Well, we've been through a lot since we first met at that cafe for breakfast," he began, stumbling over his words. "I've not been great at asking what you think we should do next, or if you even wanted to. I mean, I didn't often ask how you felt. It seemed like we just went from one thing to another without much talk. But I hope it was clear. If you didn't want to try something new, I wouldn't force you, right?" "Ryan, you've never forced me into anything," Consuela said. "I wouldn't do something I didn't want to. I wouldn't let you," she added, reassuring him. "Yeah, I know," Ryan replied. "I've relied on that. But now," he shifted, moving closer and looking at her more directly. "Now, I need to ask you something because we both need to know where we stand before this next step." He reached for her hand again, then let go. He fumbled behind him on the couch. Consuela's gaze met his, feeling a bit impatient. Then her eyes went wide. She pulled her hand away and covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Consuela," Ryan said, his voice deep. "Over the past few months, I've realized I love you more than I can say. I want you to be, Will? Could you possibly be?" "Yes," Consuela whispered back. Ryan looked at her, lost for words. He had prepared for a longer, more polished speech, maybe even having to persuade her a bit. He found it hard to get used to things quick. You will? He kind of mumbled, just to double check he heard right. Consuela nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. Ryan reached for the tiny box with his left hand and brought it in front of him. He opened the box clumsily and took out the diamond ring. It had looked nice in the shop. The stone was big, he thought, but now he had doubts. Maybe he should have chosen differently. He took a deep breath for courage, took Consuela's left hand and started to put the ring on her finger. When the ring was in place, Consuela started to cry hard. Feeling unsure, Ryan hugged her and patted her back. He didn't fully get why, but she wasn't pushing him away. That must be okay, he figured. He was not sure, though. "Mommy, why are you sad?" Belinda asked. She had just shown up by Consuela's side. She looked like she might cry, too. Belinda had gone to her room to play when it looked like her mom and Ryan were going to sit and talk. She came back when she heard her mom cry. Consuela turned to her, still with tears. She lifted her daughter onto her lap. "See what Ryan gave me?" Consuela showed her the white gold ring with the big stone. "Isn't it neat?" "Uh-huh," Belinda said, not too sure. "Why did Ryan give that to you?" "'Cause we're gonna get married, sweetie," Consuela said, giving her a cheek kiss. "Cool, right?" Belinda thought for a sec. "I guess. What's married mean?" Consuela laughed and held her daughter close. "It means you, me, and Ryan will all live together now. You good with that?" Belinda got that. She started to grin. "Does that mean Ryan won't have to leave at night?" she asked, all happy. Ryan and Consuela had a way of doing things where Ryan stayed over at night, woke up super early, took a quiet bath, put on new clothes from what he kept at Consuela's place, and then went to sleep on the couch in the living room. When Belinda woke up, it seemed like Ryan had just got there, ready to start the day with her and her mom. Consuela shook her head to Belinda's question. "Never again," she said. "Our home will be his home too." "Okay," Belinda said happily. She thought for a bit, looking at her mom. "But why did you cry, Mommy?" she asked again. "'Cause I'm so happy," Consuela said, smiling at her. Belinda thought about that answer. "Well, I won't cry when I'm happy," she said, almost a bit upset. "I laugh when I'm happy," she added. She started to get up from her mom's lap. Ryan stopped her. "Belinda?" Ryan said softly. The 5-year-old looked at him. "There's more." "What?" she asked. "Well, if I marry your mom, then I'm going to be—" He let the words hang and looked at Consuela. He raised his eyebrows, asking without words. Consuela nodded, tears in her eyes again. "What?" Belinda wanted to know. "Kids don't like to wait." Ryan took a deep breath. "Well, that means I'm going to be your dad," he said slowly. "If that's okay with you," he added. Belinda looked at him seriously. Her eyes got very big. She looked back at her mom to make sure. "Really?" she said, looking at Ryan again. "You'll be my dad?" She was so sweet, Ryan just nodded. Suddenly he found it hard to speak. He cleared his throat. "If you want me to be," he said after a bit. The kid didn't need long to decide. "I do," little Belinda said. She reached out her arms and leaned toward him. Ryan hugged his stepdaughter for the first time. He pecked her head and she looked up with a grin. On impulse, she shifted to her knees and hugged him tight. Ryan was speechless again. The lump in his throat stayed for a bit. When it was time for bed, Consuela told Belinda she now had a dad for the father-daughter day tomorrow. Belinda's eyes went wide. She'd forgotten. It took her almost an hour to calm down for sleep. Next morning, Belinda rushed to her mom's room. Consuela and Ryan had spent the night together, breaking their usual way. Belinda didn't mind. Tommy, Maria, and Lisa from kindergarten said their parents sleep in the same bed too. Ryan thought to ask why, but Consuela's nudge stopped him. Later, he was glad he didn't ask. Maybe it was best not to know. Belinda was too excited to eat much breakfast. She played with her cereal but drank all her milk. Then she hurried down the sidewalk to Ryan's truck. At school, she clung to Ryan's hand. She showed him off, introducing him to all her little friends and teachers. "This is my new daddy," she said with pride. "I don't really know how to start, Ryan. I guess just thanks for being here," Carrie said, unsure. They were sitting at a small table under a big pecan tree. The prison camp had a nice grassy spot for visits, between the main building and one dorm where inmates stayed. Ryan spoke in a calm voice. "The one thing your lawyer really wanted was for me to hand you the divorce papers myself," he said. He tried not to let any harsh feelings show. This might be the last time he would see his now ex-wife, Carrie. Her only request had been for him to personally deliver the papers. She hadn't reached out to him after that night she and Shawn Michaels got into trouble at the club. Even when she faced charges, she didn't talk to him. Ryan had wanted it that way, but was a bit taken aback she hadn't tried to reach out at all. "Now I find out I can't do what you wanted," Ryan said. "The rules here won't let me bring in any paperwork or, well, anything except what I'm wearing," he explained. "Yes, I found out about that after I got here," Carrie replied. "And they told me you got a special okay to just leave it with the staff instead of sending it by mail like the rules say. I'm thankful for that. I truly am." Ryan just shrugged. What Carrie was thankful for didn't matter to him anymore. She had hurt him too much, and he had moved on. He looked around the visiting area. Bryan Women's Federal Prison Camp was a place with low security. It didn't have the high fences or barbed wire he expected. The only thing that set it apart from the nearby area was a normal chain-link fence like the ones in any neighborhood. The buildings were beige with red roofs, looking like many in the Southwest. The grass was green and lush, trees were tall, offering lots of shade. Everything was neat. Ryan couldn't see any trash or mess. From the outside, the place seemed nice and relaxed. He wondered how it felt to be inside. So Ryan and Carrie had their final talk in this serene setting, each lost in their thoughts about the past and their now separate futures. "What do we do now?" Carrie asked in a soft voice. She sat straight, hands in her lap. By the rules, she couldn't hug Ryan more than a quick one. She knew Ryan wouldn't like that rule, so they just said hi softly. Carrie felt the eyes of the prison staff on her. "There's nothing to do, Carrie," Ryan said, looking at her again. "There's no us now. That's what divorce means." Carrie looked down. She felt sad but not broken. She saw it coming. "Ryan, I'm so sorry for messing us up. What I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. I hope you believe me. I never wanted to hurt you." Ryan just moved a bit. He fixed his sunglasses. The sun was bright and hit his eyes from the white walls. "I don't get it, Carrie," Ron said. "How did you think being with your boss wouldn't hurt me?" Carrie's face tightened. She bit her lip a bit. "You weren't meant to find out, Ryan. I know it sounds silly now, but I thought if you didn't know, then it was like—" She stopped, trying to find the right words. "No harm? No foul?" Ryan helped. Carrie thought a moment, then nodded slowly. She didn't like the words much, but they kind of showed how she felt before. Ryan let out a small laugh. He turned to face Carrie for the first time. He felt like he didn't know her. In her clean prison clothes, she looked different to him. He couldn't recall seeing her dressed so plainly before. Her face looked leaner than he remembered. The light spots on her nose stood out more. Her green eyes looked too big for her face now. Her light hair, now cut even shorter than before, hung dull. He saw her small figure hunched, like she bore a heavy weight. She was a stranger who had hurt him. "You were still wrong, Carrie," he said sharp, knowing or not. Ryan paused, closed his eyes. He tried to calm his breath. "This was going nowhere. Sorry, I don't know why I try," he said later. "It bugs me when folks say what you don't know won't harm you. It does harm, it's just not felt yet." "I get it," Carrie said gently. "I didn't see it then, but now I do." Ryan shrugged. "Too late, Carrie," he said. No warmth in his voice. Carrie's face twinged. "Yes, you're right," she said low. "I can't undo my wrong, hun. Ryan, but I'm paying heavy now. Won't do it again, I swear." Ryan shook his head. "No, you're paying for lying to a Fed, not for messing up our lives and Sharon Michaels. Don't even start." Ryan turned, ready to stand. "And talking divorce, that's just paperwork. That's it. It's not a penalty. You broke us. I just had a judge mark it official, nothing more." No softness in his look. Carrie faced him, sad, tears nearly spilling. "I know, Ryan, I do. I've messed up big and can't make it right," she said quietly, fighting tears. Ryan's shoulders rose and dropped. "Life's about choices, Carrie. You chose wrong, now you live with them," he said, keeping it neutral. "No blame. Is there a chance for us after I'm—" Carrie started. Ryan shook his head firm. He pulled off his shades and gently put them on the table. "I don't want to seem harsh or mean," he started slowly. "It's pointless and a waste. Look, Carrie, I'll be getting hitched next week." Carrie was hit hard by this. It never crossed her mind that Ryan would move on, and so quickly. I don't know what to say, she managed to say. I wish you all the best, she added. Tears were close to spilling from her eyes. I didn't mean to drop it like that, Ryan said, kinda sorry. I thought maybe I'd send you a letter later or something. Oh, heck. I wasn't sure. After some quiet, Carrie pulled herself together, a strength she hadn't known in her before. The strict rules here in jail were shaping her quicker than she thought. I do wish you and... What's her name? She asked, hesitating. Consuela, Ryan filled in. Consuela Robertson. Consuela, that's a pretty name, Carrie mentioned, no sourness in her tone. I truly wish you happiness, she tried to smile. A puzzled look crossed her face, and Ryan nodded, understanding. You know her, he said low. She worked at the bank. She was among those who sued our boss for bad behavior. My lawyer found stuff about them. Consuela and I met after, and that's how it went, he explained. Ryan half thought this talk about his soon wedding might bring up his bride-to-be. Any words would naturally bring her name into it. His planned words were not wrong by any stretch, yet they weren't fully right either. Carrie watched Ryan a long spell without a word. Well, I hope you two are happy, she said at last. I'm sure she won't hurt you like I did, she added, a bit of sharpness in her voice this time. Ryan let it slide. Carrie didn't have the right to be upset about his choices anymore. He stood up but didn't walk away right then. I won't come back here, he said. Consuela and I, well, you know. Carrie nodded. So, goodbye, Carrie, he said. I hope things go well for you once you're out of here. Thanks, Ryan. That means a lot, Carrie replied, standing up too, but staying on her side of the table. Ryan nodded and turned to leave. Then he stopped, paused, and looked back at Carrie. Carrie, there's something I can't wrap my head around. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But why? Why go for that guy in the first place? Carrie had thought this might be one of the first things Ryan would ask. She figured she'd be a bit careful with her answer, but now she saw no point. Ryan had made it clear they were done for good. Yet, she paused for a bit before speaking. I didn't mean to cheat, she said clearly. I was happy. Things seemed like they were getting back to how they were. Before the first time, she looked at her ex-husband, feeling guilty. They hadn't talked about how this was her second time stepping out on him. I was all in on us for a while, she continued. Then I got a big jump up at the bank, and some wins after that. More to do and the perks that came with it. Ryan, I liked being the boss of things, and I saw a path to the top ... in the management there. She threw her hands up, making a face. It was so bad, but I saw Shawn Michaels could help me climb up, and I let him. He was paying me more money, almost as much as you see. He wasn't a good man, Ryan. I never loved him. In fact, he was pretty bad. I read that people often pick someone worse than them when they cheat. It makes them feel better. I guess that's what I did. Being with him made me feel special, Ryan, she said tiredly. I thought we had our own little world that was perfect. I felt more sure of myself, even though it wasn't true. I was unhappy. I can't make excuses, Ryan. I got caught up in wanting more at work and liking the attention from someone else. I think I lost my way. I'm sorry, I really am. Ryan needed a moment to think about her words. He was gentle with his question. And the things people told me about what you said about me, about our life, he asked. He couldn't let on that he already knew some things from secretly recording her. Carrie was caught off guard. She hadn't expected this. After thinking, she spoke. Maybe guilt, she finally said. At first, I felt terrible for what I was doing. I think I started arguing with you so I could keep going. Later, I didn't feel as guilty if I made it seem like your fault, you know? I started to see everything differently. Every time you were upset or disagreed with me, for real or just in my head, ... it was another reason to see things badly. It was easy to pretend I was the one being wronged. I started to think of you as stopping me, making me be someone I'm not. I knew you still didn't trust me after the first mess-up, and that made me feel trapped. I thought you were trying to hold me back. Then, in my head, what I did didn't seem so bad. I mean, if I made it out like you were the wrong one, then how could I be to blame, right? I needed that idea to feel less bad each time I did things I shouldn't. It was a must for me. I couldn't stop. It felt like I had to keep going no matter what. I don't know what else to say, Ryan. It was wrong, but I was so mixed up then, like walking in a thick fog, and I just couldn't find the way out. I didn't want to put my husband second, but I wasn't in my right mind. I did that, and I feel so bad. Ryan looked at her a moment more, then shook his head. You've changed so much of our story, he said, from what I've found out. Some from our past told me what you said was really hurtful. His face showed his sadness. And all because you were okay with betraying yourself to get more, huh? What? Carrie couldn't believe it. I never... Yeah, you did, Ryan cut back with anger. A hooker sleeps with others for money. You did it with Michaels. And who knows who else? 'Cause you wanted more. It's all the same, just with folks who dress better. Ryan's voice was full of disgust and held back anger. My wife, the sellout, he said with a heavy heart. I'm done. He walked away fast, heading to the nearest exit. He didn't turn back. In the dead of night, Carrie woke up with a start. You jerk! She yelled out. In her sleep, she made a link she hadn't seen when awake. Carrie had picked up right then that Ryan's new girl once worked for Shawn Michaels when he told her Consuela's whole name. But she didn't think much of it then. It took her this long to recall Consuela knew how to get into the bank stuff, the things everyone blamed Shawn for doing. While she slept, Carrie's mind tied that bit of info to what her lawyer had told her weeks back. Shawn Michaels had pointed fingers at Ryan for all the mess. His lawyer had pushed for a new trial with this new proof, but the judge had quickly said no. Her loud cries woke up the dorm. Others got up, heading to the bathroom, and a guard came to Carrie's door. She got a warning. She might be sent to a tougher place. Falling back asleep was hard. She wondered, would her lawyer come to Brian if she called for a meeting right away? For the first time in a while, she felt a spark of hope, but that hope died with the morning light. As she got ready, a deep feeling of being stuck hit her. Shawn's claims led nowhere. This would end the same. Carrie knew her ex-husband too well. He wouldn't have dragged his new wife into it unless he knew it would lead nowhere. He had done it on purpose, knowing she'd connect the dots. Ryan was sharp. He'd have cleared his tracks well. No one could pin down how he and Consuela pulled it off, and no one could prove it. She smirked. Ryan had said the divorce wasn't a payback for her cheating. It was just paperwork. That was his line. The shame when the TV show caught her and Ryan. Just a detail, he'd said. She saw all of it now. No, this was her real punishment. Along with a year in jail, she had to deal with knowing he knew about her cheating, that he set her and Shawn up, and she was stuck. Biting her lips, Carrie forced herself to get up and head to the dining area. Today, she was on yard work and needed the energy. They were going to dig 3 new veggie patches and a flower bed in front of the main building. Tonight, after eating, she'd cross out today on her calendar. 319 days left. After, according to Texas law, a month and a day after Ryan's divorce was done, he married Consuela in the small town where she was born. Nearly everyone from the town came to the party that was held in the VFW hall nearby. Hours after he asked her to marry him, Ryan wondered when the wedding would be and what they needed to do to plan it. Consuela told him her mom and she had most of it ready. They just needed a date. Seeing his surprised face, she told Ryan that she, her mom, and other family members had guessed he would ask. It was just a matter of when. Shocked, Ryan started to see what he was getting into. But soon, it didn't bother him. Consuela loved him, he loved her, and they both loved Belinda. That was all he needed. Still, he went and rented steel magnolias from the local video shop. He needed to know where to draw the line. 3 weeks after the marriage, Ryan and Consuela took their marriage certificate to a lawyer who knows this stuff, and Ryan started to adopt Belinda. Finding the girl's real dad was easy enough near Santa Fe, New Mexico. He hit tough times, as folks say, and was more than ready to sign the papers for Belinda's adoption for $50 and 2 bottles of cheap wine. But no money or wine was seen in the video the private eyes made just to be safe. 3 years later, they found Belinda's real dad dead in a dry stream bed that had been full last week from a big storm. The local paper only gave him 2 lines. Belinda did fine with 2 parents. Ryan and Consuela had been a bit worried because she had only been with her mom all her life. She was just 5 and couldn't say much about it, but it was clear she liked being loved by 2 people instead of just having 2 folks tell her what to do. She used this chance well. After Belinda had her new dad to herself for a year, Consuela thought she needed that, Consuela had the first of 3 more kids. Jeanette, Rosita, and Roberto came one after the other, about 14 to 16 months apart. Instead of being upset, Belinda saw them as more family. She told Trish at the cafe we were having another when Consuela's belly showed with Roberto. Trish was surprised, then smiled big. Carrie Gilchrist did her time quietly at the jail. Her stay was too short for a chance to go to a halfway place, so she did all 365 days in FPC Bryan, Texas. When she got out, she found Ryan had left her a nice gift. Half from selling their house, stuff inside, and some other things like cars, was hers in an account that made a bit of money. She took the cash, got a beauty shop in Fort Worth, and dove deep into her new job. Her past crimes stopped her from going back to banking, but she didn't really miss it. For reasons she didn't fully get, Carrie kept quiet about her doubts on Consuela. Years later, she figured it was her way to make up for her old life's mistakes. Shawn Michaels found prison life hard. He didn't get along with the staff, especially the bosses, and showed it. After a few tough months in a medium security jail, facing threats without guard help, Michaels changed. He acted better. He moved to a lighter security jail, then to an even easier one where he spent his last 16 years locked up. There, he loved teaching others math, reading, and writing. Finding joy in helping, he fought for the rights of inmates. Sharon Michaels stuck by him through the trial, mostly to look good. But once he was sentenced, she left him and went back to Colorado to be near her folks. Sometime later, she met an officer from the Colorado State Patrol. After a long romance, they wed. She made him promise to never cheat, or else. He knew better than to stray. Even after moving to different cities for his FBI job, Agent Stan Williams couldn't shake off the feeling that something about Ryan Gilchrist and the big bank scam was still hidden. When he retired, he started a small safety company in New York. Great-uncle Roberto, Consuela's uncle from Mexico City, was really happy when he found out they named their littlest kid after him. He visited as much as he could, bonding with Ryan, the baby, and the other kids too. The bank never got back any of the $9 million that had been sent to faraway bank accounts. They eventually gave up trying and focused on making more money. After 2 years, none of the old bank bosses were still around. Parker Winston ended up as the main money guy until he retired to the Bahamas. The $7 million that Uncle Roberto kept in Mexico never made its way to Ryan and Consuela in the north. They didn't want or need it after winning some money from the bank. They had already gotten their payback on the bank and those who wronged them. Wondering what to do with the large sum, Roberto listened to the Gilchrists' advice and spent it on causes he cared deeply about. 3 years after the U.S. closed the case, a small ship snuck near Venezuela's shore. Boats lifted a huge load of new guns and stuff to help a little group of fighters who were up against the leader's army. Months later, these fighters took over a city and started to make it their base. Things seemed good for them. The CIA and other spy groups didn't find out who sent the weapons, and they didn't look too hard either. Consuela's cousin, once removed, Richard, joined Ryan in happily smashing the laptop they had. They shot the hard drive with big guns until it broke into pieces. They then buried these bits deep in an old mine and blew it up just for kicks and to get rid of some old dynamite Richard had. Ryan and Consuela didn't really feel bad for taking the money. They did it more for payback for what was done to them and felt it was right. Just getting the 2 fired from their jobs wasn't enough for them. It was the jail time that mattered, and the bank trick was key to getting Shawn and Carrie locked up. The fact that Shawn and Carrie even lived was something Ryan and Consuela thought they should be thankful for. Jail was better than what would have happened to cheating folks 100 years back in the same town. Ryan often said back then he would have had to shoot both Shawn and Carrie for what they did. The tough payback for the cheaters was needed for Ryan and Consuela to move on. All was now square. When their first kid came, Ryan and Consuela took over a local farm and moved their family a bit away from town. Ryan's small building biz knocked down the old stuff and put up their first big house, made just how Consuela liked after she worked tight with a house designer. As the kids grew, the family would camp out in the wild parts of the Llano Estacado during summers. This is where Ryan shared secret spots his grandpa had shown him. Belinda, their eldest, fell hard for the high desert and went to college to learn about old Native American tales. She married a fellow student in the same field, and they spent lots of time alone on the vast plain. Ryan got teary twice over Belinda. The first, she was showing him off as her dad to her young class. He kept it together enough so only some saw his eyes wet. The second time, he cried when Belinda had him meet her new baby boy in the hospital, telling him she named the baby Ryan. Hey listeners, if you enjoyed watching this video and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss out on what's coming next. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video with Queen Cheating Tales.